a certain Superman in Marvel. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 126 Kang Mutant and the Future Joshua. Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, narrowed his eyes as he looked at the human boy and the girl before him. Having just awakened, he was still somewhat unaccustomed to the light, which he found unbearable. The ether was within the girl's body. It was a Dark Elf's treasure and a powerful weapon. He needed the ether to restore the Dark Elf's glory. Joshua glanced at the Dark Elves and said, "Leave now, and I'll spare your life." Even Thanos, with those 6 gems, couldn't defeat him, let alone this Dark Elves. However, he had taken their treasure. Killing them would be excessive. Since the Dark Elves were willing to return to darkness, there was no need for him to kill them. "Hand over the ether, and I'll let you die without pain," the Dark Elves' leader growled. He was a Dark Elves, a former overlord, so how could he be frightened? He approached Joshua and Zero. Zero said, "Leave it to me, I'll do it, it'll be quick," Joshua said, and then a searing, scorching energy gathered in his eyes. This was heat vision capable of piercing a planet, more than enough to kill a Dark Elf. His eyes were already filled with golden light, their shimmering golden pupils appearing exceptionally dazzling. Then, a burst of golden heat vision shot out. In an instant, it pierced through the Dark Elf, piercing the mountain behind him as well. The Dark Elf was stunned. He had a formidable body, so why did he seem so fragile as a piece of paper? The Dark Elf was dead, his body falling straight to the ground. Joshua looked at the Dark Elf. After all, this was a supreme overlord, leaving him to lie exposed in the wilderness seemed unbecoming. After a moment's thought, he tossed the Dark Elf back into the cave where he had been, declaring it his final resting place. He then completely leveled the mountain. Homeward bound, Joshua buried the Dark Elf and took flight. He wasn't flying fast, he wasn't in a rush to get home anyway, so it was nice to fly slowly and enjoy the scenery. After a while, he spotted a plane. Some people on board had spotted Joshua. "Mom, look, it's Superman," a little girl at the window exclaimed excitedly, surprised to see Joshua on a spaceship. Meanwhile, a robber about to rob someone silently sheathed his weapon. He knew how powerful Superman was, robbing him in front of him was courting death. "It's Superman, huh? What kind of superhero is he?" someone scorned Joshua. Joshua glanced at the plane before suddenly accelerating, soaring into space in an instant, the clamor fading. He floated in space, silently gazing at the earth, his head resting on his head, like someone sleeping in bed. It was quite comfortable here, at least for him. "Watch out," Peter grabbed a lizard and punched him. The blow was so powerful that it sent him flying dozens of meters. He finally came to rest when his body slammed into a wall, leaving cracks in the wall that resembled a spider web. The lizard landed and stared at Spider-Man with a grin. Spider-Man's attacks were still ferocious, and he noticed that Spider-Man's combat abilities were increasing, making him less easily defeated than before. It looked like they needed to upgrade themselves, or they'd be caught soon. He didn't want to live in prison. Sandman and Electro approached. They were robbing a bank today, something they'd been planning for days, even with the cooperation of other villains. After all, without their cooperation, they couldn't take the money from the Spider Team. The Spider Team was truly formidable. They were merely distracting the team's attention. The one who went to take the money was a mage. While not particularly skilled in combat, he was very adept at stealing. Spider-Woman looked at the 3 familiar figures before her and couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my god. Can't you just go to work?" She was getting a little annoyed. Lizard Man grinned and said, "Working won't give me enough money to buy the materials for my experiments." Rhino Man said, "That's right. One robbery will last us forever." Sandman said in a hoarse voice, "My daughter needs enough money. I need money, for them." Robbing a bank was like a shortcut. Once they'd taken it, they couldn't take the harder road again. Neither side spoke. Sandman gradually grew larger, transforming into a towering sand giant. He roared and charged towards the spider squad. Sand in his fists coalesced into a massive sand hammer. He swung it at Penny. Although Penny was piloting a mech, her reflexes were incredibly fast. She nimbly dodged the attack, then her spider mech stomped the ground with a kick. In an instant, her speed increased to a terrifying level, and she was in front of Sandman in the blink of an eye. A powerful punch shattered the Sandman's head, sending fine sands flying all over the sky. The Sandman stumbled backward, but the sand was gradually coalescing, and it looked like a new Sandman head would soon form. Peter felt a little pain, but he fought back. He fired a web of silk, pulling the lizard man towards him. Peter's fists were already thirsty. Bang! The iron fist sent the lizard man flying. Peter adjusted his position in the air and landed smoothly. He was now much stronger than when he first debuted, and at least he could now fight supervillains without too much difficulty. The lizard man's body hit the ground. He touched his face, dizzy from Spider-Man's punch. "We have to leave," Electro suddenly said. He had received the message that the money had been taken, so there was no need to continue entangled with the spider team. Sandman nodded. Electro opened his arms, and the next second, dense blue electricity swept towards the spider team. Peter nimbly dodged the attack, while Penny, driving the mech, violently rushed through the current. She then saw a golden portal. She had no idea these cunning people had support. The golden portal quickly disappeared. Peter also jumped aside and said, "They escaped?" "Yeah," Penny nodded. While floating in space, Joshua suddenly saw a shining figure. This person was very fast. Oh, it turned out to be Captain Marvel, the Captain Marvel of this universe. She seemed to think of herself as a person in distress. Sure enough, Captain Marvel flew in front of him in a few moments. "I'm fine, don't worry about me," Joshua spoke directly into Captain Marvel's mind. "Huh?" Captain Marvel looked at Joshua in surprise, then she remembered that the black-haired boy in front of her was Superman. "So what are you doing?" Captain Marvel asked Joshua in her mind. "Earth is too noisy. I came here to quiet down for a while," Joshua said very frankly. He really felt that Earth was a bit noisy. "Captain Marvel," Joshua's answer was a bit unexpected. Captain Marvel was well aware of Superman's abilities, but she was surprised that Joshua, despite possessing power that affected the entire universe, only cared about Earth. It was truly bizarre. If some ambitious individual possessed his power, the entire universe would likely be turned upside down. Thinking carefully, Joshua was reassuring. After all, he was relatively kind-hearted and wouldn't kill for no reason. Although she had heard about his despicable incident with an aircraft carrier, she'd probably do the same if she were in his shoes. She didn't think Joshua was excessive in that regard. After all, if someone was about to hurt you and you didn't fight back, you'd just become a predator. She'd heard a lot about Joshua from Nick Fury. In fact, when Joshua initially destroyed the White House, he'd asked her to help, but after learning about the situation, she'd declined. This was her first time seeing Joshua, though she'd seen photos of him before, and a closer look revealed he looked much better in person. Gazing at the young man before her, she said, "Nick Fury has told me a lot about you." "Oh?" Joshua's response sounded somewhat lackluster. He wasn't particularly interested in Captain Marvel, and his lack of interest was meant to let her know he didn't want to talk and should leave immediately. Captain Marvel, however, was quite perceptive. She noticed Joshua's lack of interest and took her own leave. With Captain Marvel gone, Joshua finally had some quiet time. Captain Marvel descended like a shooting star, quickly reaching the ground. Nick Fury was waiting for her. As soon as she landed, she said, "I met Superman." Nick Fury grew nervous and said, "You didn't have a conflict, did you?" "No," Captain Marvel said. Natasha, who was nearby, asked, "What do you think of him?" He seems a bit cold, like he doesn't really like to talk," Captain Marvel said. When she'd looked at Joshua earlier, she'd sensed a keep away from me aura emanating from him. "Let's go get something to eat first," Nick Fury said. Captain Marvel nodded. In a certain universe, a group of Conqueror Kangs were discussing something. A Kang in a suit said, "He will travel through the universe on Saturday, and we can attack him then." Hearing this, another Kang wearing glasses said, "His body is already the strongest. Even the turbulence of space can't tear his body apart. We can't kill him, and judging from the current situation, it's best not to provoke him." Kang in a suit said again, "I know all this. We don't need to kill him. We just need to expel him from our universe. He is very smart and powerful, but he is also very arrogant. He looks down on us. We can take advantage of his arrogance." All the Kangs felt this way. Joshua's appearance was like a virus. They didn't notice it at first, But when they did, he had already turned into a monster that could not be shaken. That's why they didn't care much about what Joshua was doing, but recently his actions have affected the interests of some King variants. King, who was wearing glasses, said, "He just wants to spread his faith. These are things we don't care about much. There is no need to conflict with him. If you want to target him, then I will withdraw." After he said that, he stood up and left. He would not take action until he found a way to kill Joshua. Some King variants followed him. "If they withdraw, then we will complete the plan." Saturday. Joshua drove the spaceship away from his universe early in the morning. Zero stuffed the snack into Joshua's mouth with his little hand. Joshua ate the snack and then said, "I seem to feel something bad is going on. Let me see what happens." Joshua silently closed his eyes, then looked into the future. He soon saw an explosion in the tunnel he was walking through, and he would fall into another universe, a universe with dragons. He soon saw a black-haired boy, his future self. The future self looked at the present self and said, "Enjoy the adventure. I'll protect Aunt May." The present Joshua could no longer see the future. The future Joshua said, "Knowing what will happen is too boring. The unknown is what excites you." Joshua nodded and opened his eyes. "Now, enjoy the adventure." Suddenly, Zero said, "Anomaly detected." As soon as he finished speaking, the orange tunnel exploded, and a pitch-black hole appeared. As expected, Joshua's spaceship was sucked in. The symbiote was startled, and it poked its head out of Joshua's body and said, "What should we do?" "Let's wait and see," Joshua said calmly, as if there was no danger. Chapter 127 Hybrid. A young woman with long burgundy hair wielded a knife. This mission had gone awry. The enemy was a peculiar hybrid, possessing two personalities, one ordinary, even cowardly, and the other a murderous monstrosity. The tall man opposite him grinned, his teeth resembling the fangs of some monster. His sharp katana gleamed coldly in his hands. A closer look revealed scales. You, leave," a young man behind the young woman said. "Quiet," the young woman, looking like an enraged beast, her hand gripping her weapon involuntarily. "Kill you." The man with the katana broke into a run, but suddenly, sensing danger, he leaped aside. He tumbled on the ground, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw a handsome mecha crash to the ground. Is this the enemy? He supposed so, only the Academy possessed such technology. He rose from the ground, swung his blade, and, no matter what, he would kill it with it. The burgundy-haired woman was also a little surprised. Was this the Academy's new weapon? Click, the hatch opened, revealing a young man with short black hair. He looked somewhat languid, yet incredibly handsome. The woman knew that the higher the bloodline, the more handsome a person would be. With such handsomeness, he must have a strong dragon bloodline. Seeing the black-haired boy emerge from the mecha, the man took off running. This was his chance. His thigh muscles suddenly activated, and in an instant, his speed reached a terrifying level. He swung his blade, slashing at the black-haired boy at breakneck speed. The burgundy-haired woman observed the black-haired boy's calm demeanor and instantly deduced a number of things. Was he not afraid, or had he not noticed? If not, it suggested he possessed immense confidence, but if he hadn't noticed, that would be disastrous. She moved, her speed equally swift. She rushed in front of the black-haired boy, but was too late. The man's blade struck him. However, the bloody scene he'd imagined didn't unfold. The man's blade landed on the boy's shoulder, but it didn't injure him at all, not even cutting through his clothes. The man was stunned. His sword could cut through steel. This was his chance. The young woman seized the opportunity and plunged her blade into the man, piercing his heart. She kicked the man away, then her gaze fell on the boy. She studied him for a moment and said, "Hello, my name is Chen Matan, you can call me Nuanuo." She sat down on the ground, looking rather unpresentable. Joshua looked at the girl before him. He'd thought he'd landed in an American comic book world, but he'd unexpectedly landed in the world of the Dragon Tribe. He knew the girl before him was the one the Dragon Tribe protagonist had a crush on. Honestly, he hadn't seen the ending of the Dragon Tribe story when he traveled through time, and it probably hadn't finished yet. Seeing the black-haired boy looking at her, Nuano asked, "Name, what's your name?" She looked carefree, likely popular among her classmates. After all, who wouldn't like a beautiful and carefree girl? "My name is Joshua Parker now," Joshua said. "Joshua Parker? Are you Asian?" Nuano asked. "His bloodline is 100% Chinese," but he was adopted by a foreigner, hence his name, Joshua said. Nono was about to continue when a voice rang through her headset. No, leave him. This world has no information about him, which means he could be a dragon king. An awakened dragon king. Nono's heart began to beat wildly. A dragon king appeared before her eyes? What kind of hell was this? She was just a freshman. She had to stay calm. No wonder he was so handsome. After all, he was a dragon king with an incredibly high bloodline. Nono began to think of a solution. Just then, Joshua spoke. This world has no information about me, so is it possible that I'm not from this world to begin with? Joshua heard the voice in the headset and spoke. Nono looked at Joshua, his brown eyes fixed on her, which frightened her. The voice in the headset stopped talking. Joshua spoke up. Well, I'm an adventurer, roaming the universe. I came to this world by accident, and I just want to have an adventure. So don't mess with me, or I'll blow the entire planet up like fireworks. Nono had been analyzing Joshua's expression, thinking he was lying, but her analysis confirmed it. Nono stood up, her expression no longer relaxed, replaced by a solemn expression. Joshua said nothing more. He used PIM particles to shrink the mech, then picked it up and placed it among his clothes. Just as he was about to leave, a helicopter arrived. A man jumped out. He looked older, but still quite handsome, the type young girls would really like, old and wealthy. The man looked at Joshua and said, I don't know if you're lying, but whether you're the Dragon King or from another world, you're a very dangerous person to this world. Joshua raised his foot and brought it down. The ground shattered instantly, the cracks covering a terrifyingly large area. I'm just saying, choose your words carefully, because once you say something, there's no taking it back. Joshua's eyes were serious. Nono stepped on the crumbling ground. For the first time, she felt as if the boy before her had stepped out of an anime. His strength was every bit as outrageous as it was in the anime. Hilbert Jean Ange said, sensing danger. The boy before him might be something more terrifying than a dragon. Joshua said, you can call me Joshua. He waved goodbye to the people of Castle Academy. Ange stared at the boy's back in silence. He was certain he wasn't a dragon, yet he possessed abilities far superior to those of a dragon. What kind of monster was he? What do you think of him? Ange asked Nono. From what he said before, he doesn't want to kill us. That means he doesn't really like fighting. He probably just wants to go on a journey. It's best not to disturb him, Nono said seriously. Chapter 128 I am not protecting him, I am protecting the world. Nuano drove a sports car, but his expression was grim. Surprised, many people were standing by the roadside. A high-end sports car like this wasn't common in this area, so they pulled out their phones to take pictures. Beautiful girl, do you want one? A handsome young man said. Get lost, Nuano said. This was the second week she'd been observing Joshua. She'd expected him to do something dramatic, but in reality, he lived a quiet life. More accurately, he was traveling and making money. She didn't know what was going on with him, but he chose to work honestly when he could have just robbed a bank. Today, he was working at a flower shop. The owner, a woman in her 30s, had been single since her youth, driven by her high standards. Now, Joshua's presence had given her some ideas. Nuano was driving behind Joshua, who was delivering flowers. Business had picked up significantly since his arrival. Older women, after all, were drawn to young men with fair complexions, and the incredibly handsome Joshua was naturally their favorite. She watched Joshua deliver the flowers to Villa. Just then, a voice entered Nuano's earpiece. Someone's trying to kill him, and the killers are ambushing him in the villa in front of you. You have to stop them, damn it, Nono cursed, then stepped on the accelerator. In an instant, the sports car shot out like a steel beast. The luxury car crashed through the iron gate. She saw Joshua holding the flowers and quickly parked the car in front of him. She spoke quickly, leave the rest to me. Joshua knew there was an ambush, but these people had no way of breaking his defense, so he didn't care. After all, he still wanted the symbiote to devour them, so he walked in. Nono took out a knife and a gun from the car and said, wait a minute, but why should I wait? Joshua looked at Nono. Nono took out her phone and opened a game. She said, help me beat the game, then she pressed the phone into Joshua's hand. Joshua didn't know what Nono was thinking, but her behavior was quite amusing. But why was he playing this game? Nono noticed a killer and raised her pistol to shoot him in the head. She said, Killing these people is too cheap for you. Leave it to me." Joshua silently walked to the tree and leaned against it. The battle was over quickly, lasting only about 5 minutes. When he saw Nono, the girl who had been wielding the knife was now injured. Her face was slashed by the sharp weapon, and the blood and flesh were tangled, looking a bit scary. Her clothes were also covered in blood. "Let's go," Nono said, covering her arm. These killers were too weak. This was probably someone testing Joshua. She took a few steps and felt a blackout before fainting. Joshua caught Nono and decided to study the hybrids. He had a dragon at home, but the dragon couldn't transform into human, while the dragons here could, so he wanted to study what allowed dragons to transform into humans. He then took Nono back to study them, and while doing so, he also treated the girl with burgundy hair. His research was as swift as ever, and soon he had extracted a substance that allowed the dragons of this world to transform into human form. He had also developed something else, a potion made from Nono's blood. This potion could enhance the strength of hybrids, significantly increasing their speed, strength, defense, and healing abilities. It was a byproduct of his research. "What did you do to me?" Nono rose from her bed, realizing she was naked. "I used a scalpel to cut your skin and drew a little blood," Joshua continued. Nono was a little angry, but her anger subsided when she remembered that Joshua had saved her. She put on her clothes. She looked around and said, "What would have happened if you had been attacked earlier? Maybe I would have killed the killer, or the person behind it, or maybe I would have blown the world up like fireworks. It all depends on my mood," Joshua said. He could do all of these things. Nono fell silent. It had seemed like she was protecting Joshua, but in reality, she was protecting the world. She had a feeling that if he had acted, the entire world would be in danger. Nuano sighed and said, "I'm just a freshman. Why did I receive such an outrageous task?" Joshua didn't respond. He walked out of the house. There were many people in this world, so they could also be used to spread the faith. Otherwise, the power of faith would be wasted. So who should be chosen to spread it? He looked at Nuano, who had just left the house. Nuano looked at the small courtyard. It was quite nice and suitable for retirement. Suddenly, he heard Joshua's voice, "I can give you power." Nuano looked at Joshua at this. She looked at the black-haired boy in front of her. What kind of power would he give her? She asked curiously, "What power can you give me?" "The power of faith can't be used for bad things." "Of course, if you want to gain more power, you have to spread the faith and let others believe in me," Joshua said. "Once you have gained great power, it will be very difficult to let go." Nuano carefully analyzed whether Joshua was lying or setting a trap for her. She wasn't sure if there was anything dangerous inside, so she was a little reluctant. But then she thought, was he so powerful? Would he need to lie? After a moment's thought, she said, "Okay." Seeing Nuano's agreement, Joshua gave Nuano the seed of faith, which then merged into Nuano's body. Soon, a screen resembling an operating system appeared in her vision. It felt like playing a game. Nuano's white battle suit gradually appeared, and soon a cape followed. "I look like a superhero from a comic book?" Nuano was surprised, not expecting such power. "As you spread your faith, your power will grow. Of course, as your faith in me deepens, you will become even more powerful," Joshua said. He suddenly had a thought, if his faith were left throughout the universe, how much more powerful would that power be? Nuano said, "Then I am now your messenger." "I guess so," Joshua said. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129. Do you want to rule the world? Nono sat beside Joshua, watching the TV. News broke about wars, reports of the United States invading other countries, ostensibly to combat terrorists but actually to plunder resources. There were also reports of American soldiers bullying female students, only in middle school. Joshua watched silently. Any world he passed through was his, and in that world, only he could bully others. Even if he did, it was best not to let them know, otherwise. He quickly turned off the news. Nono asked, "What are you going to do?" She had a bad feeling, and a suspicion. "I'm going to rule the world. Every life lost in war means my faith is lost," Joshua said, and he meant it. Nono wanted to say, "Are you sane? How could one person rule the world?" but she calmed down. Perhaps Joshua could actually do it. After all, his abilities were too incredible. Thinking back to what Joshua had just seen, she began to understand something. She also stood up and said, "Are you launching an even larger war to end it? But that would probably kill even more people." She felt that if humans went to war with Joshua, with his abilities, he would surely kill a great many. "Human weapons can't hurt me. Trust me, only those who deserve to die will die," Joshua declared. Nono was about to say something, but Joshua had already taken to the sky. She watched as Joshua broke the sound barrier, his speed increasing until he vanished in an instant. Nono immediately reported the matter to Castle Academy. A moment later, Nono received an answer. Castle Academy would organize a team to kill Joshua. The team would include Chuzihan, the assassin, and other high-ranking fighters from the academy. No, she knew Castle Academy's strength and knew they couldn't retreat. If they went to kill Joshua, they would definitely be the ones to die. What a trouble. Nono felt that Joshua was like a child, doing whatever he wanted. Nono took a deep breath, and then a milky white light appeared, followed by a white battle suit and cape. She was determined to stop the Academy's forces. Nono flew towards the Academy. Castle Academy. The Academy's top fighters had already gathered. Principal Ange began, "We might die." Before he could finish, a figure plummeted from the sky. Bang! With a resounding roar, the ground crumbled. The Castle Academy's leaders all looked toward the spot where the figure had landed. "It's Nono," Caesar began. He had met Nono at the beginning of the semester and had spoken a few times, but he had since been assigned to a mission, and Nono's mission was related to this one's objective. Susie knew Nono well, they were roommates, after all. Seeing Nono, she asked with some surprise, "Why can you fly?" The others were puzzled. Nono glanced at the others and said, "I won't let you go find him." "Have you been brainwashed?" Caesar asked, surprised. "I'm not brainwashed," Nono said. Now it was Jester and Joshua standing together. This was really interesting. Nono could actually stand by and watch, but she always felt that she couldn't do so. After all, she had friends at Castle Academy. Susie said, "Are you crazy?" and then walked towards Nono. "What nonsense is this crazy girl talking about? Is she trying to kill herself?" Susie walked in front of Nono, but the next second Nono knocked her out with a punch. Nono's behavior immediately alerted the top management of Castle Academy. Principal Ange took out his folding knife and used the word spirit in an instant to rush towards Nono. He was ready to kill her with one blow. Judging from Nono's previous strength, he could easily kill her. But when he got close to Nono, Nono grabbed his hand and slammed him to the ground. He felt a sharp pain. Nono's blow almost crippled him. He endured the excruciating pain and tried to fight back, but Nuano broke both of his legs. Nuano was now extremely ferocious. She knew Joshua possessed immense medical skills, so even if she crippled everyone in the academy, they could be healed later. A temporary disability was better than losing their lives. Nuano kicked Ange aside and declared, "I won't let you leave here." Chuzihan drew his knife, his golden eyes dazzling and oppressive. He declared, "Get out of the way or die." His voice was cold. Nuano smiled and said, "I've been fed up with your stinky face for a while now. Come here and let me give you a few punches." Caesar drew his gun and pointed it at Nuano, saying, "You still have time to surrender." Nuano had only met Caesar a few times, so they weren't very familiar with each other. She said, "Come on, everyone. I'm in a hurry." Nuano's words were arrogant, but she had the right to be so, the immense power Joshua had bestowed upon her. Chuzihan rushed forward and pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Nono and sparks flew. Caesar was a little dumbfounded. How could this be possible? Nono grabbed Chuzihan's knife and punched Chuzihan in the face. This punch directly knocked Chuzihan away. Chuzihan's nose was also bleeding. Caesar was shocked. When did Nono become so strong? Just when he was surprised, Nono appeared in front of him. Caesar immediately raised his hands and said, "I surrender." In response, Nono's long legs kicked Caesar far away. At this time, Nono was like a god of war. Nono did not stop. After all, there were other people. A few minutes later, Nono breathed a sigh of relief. "Finally, it's solved," she said. As she turned to leave, she saw Susie stand up. "What the hell are you doing? You're helping a villain who wants to rule the world." Nono glanced at Susie and said, "Even though he's being pretentious, I know he wants to end war. I understand, so I'm willing to help him." To end war, so he wants to rule the world? No, this is the real world, not a comic book. How could one person rule the world? Susie wondered if Nono was crazy. Nono held out his hand and said, I'll take you to see his power. You'll understand once you see it. Susie grabbed Nono's hand. Then, Nono picked Susie up and flew into the sky. Susie couldn't help but say, I have someone I like. Nono scolded, shut up. I'm not interested in girls, you're flying so fast, Susie said, and in a flash, they were far away. Of course. Are you envious of my abilities? Nono couldn't help but boast. Chapter 130 Do you want to be president? Countless guns were pointed at Joshua, leaving a layer of bullet casings beneath the crowd's feet. The crowd had previously fired indiscriminately at Joshua, but it had been completely ineffective, and he had already demonstrated his devastating power. Joshua looked at the president and said, So you won't surrender? The black man nodded, then pulled out his gun and fired a shot at Joshua's head. Bang! The bullet struck Joshua's face and deflected. Not bad, I quite like your personality, Joshua said, then walked over to the vice president and put his arm around his neck. The vice president was too frightened to speak. Do you want to be president? Joshua asked. The vice president looked at the president, honestly terrified, but on reflection, it seemed like an opportunity. Just then, the president said, Are you going to betray us? He then fired a shot at the vice president, but how could he possibly hurt Joshua? Joshua easily caught a bullet and said, I need an obedient president. I believe you can do it, the vice president swallowed. He wanted to be president because that would put him above everyone else. He nodded. Well, then, you're president. Joshua drew his gun and shot the president in the head. Everyone was silent. Joshua said, Now your president is this gentleman. Does anyone have any objections? Just then, a woman stepped forward. Just as everyone expected her to rebuke Joshua, she said, Can I be vice president? I'm very obedient, Joshua. Everyone, the vice president, you're quite amusing. So you're vice president. Who else has any objections? Joshua glanced around. No one dared to object. No objections. Then come with me to the meeting. The leaders of all the countries in the world will be attending, Joshua said. Because one person would be too slow, he used clones. He then sent them to conquer other countries, and by now, the task was almost complete. Next, it was time to go to the meeting. He left the content of the meeting to Zero, who was, after all, capable of handling it perfectly. Joshua opened the portal and said, She'll take you there. Zero suddenly appeared and politely said, Let's go, Mr. President. The former vice president nodded and walked in. The woman who had spoken earlier then said, Clean this place up. No one moved. After all, she had only been a translator. Suddenly, the woman pulled out a gun, shot through a man's thigh, and roared, Hurry up! The people rushed into action. They weren't afraid of the woman, but they were afraid of Joshua. Zero had planted seeds of faith in the heads of all the leaders to protect them, control them, and, of course, to facilitate issuing orders. After Zero finished his work, he brought the people before Joshua. Joshua sat on the steps, silently observing them. His gaze filled them with fear. Just then, Nono and Susie arrived. They were immediately greeted by a large crowd and Joshua sitting on the steps. Susie looked at these people and found that they were basically politicians from various countries. What happened? I don't have anything to say. After all, Zero has already told you. Go back and just follow my ideas, Joshua said. Then he opened the portal and let these people leave one after another. Nono took Susie to Joshua and said, Who are these people? They are all leaders of various countries. I just assigned tasks to them, Joshua said. Susie, she wanted to say that Joshua was bragging. But she knew very well that these people were politicians from various countries. Nono couldn't help but say, So you successfully ruled the earth? Yes, I succeeded. It's a very simple thing to rule on earth. Joshua said that the management matters could be completely handed over to Zero and he didn't need to worry about it. At that moment, a man approached. He was the former vice president. He flattered him, I'll definitely complete the mission. Joshua nodded and said, If you do a good job, I can reward you. Even if you want eternal life, I can grant you that. The man was so excited he almost knelt before Joshua. But he had one thing to say. He began, Sir, my daughter has a heart condition. Can you help her? He immediately knelt. Only you can save her. I'll work even harder and do everything according to your wishes." Joshua nodded and said, "Okay." Saving lives was a trivial matter to him, just a matter of convenience. The man let out a strange cry of excitement, then stood up and hurried to retrieve his daughter. Nono said, "It feels like you're taking over the world like a piece of cake. I was thinking I'd fight you against the entire world's soldiers. Everything seemed so easy, almost boring." "That's about right," Joshua said. At this moment, Nono pointed to the woman beside him and said, "She's my roommate, Susie." "I know. I saw her earlier when you were fighting," Joshua said. Nono's mouth dropped open, then he asked, "How did you see that?" "Well, I can see everything on Earth and hear what people are thinking," Joshua said. Susie's face paled. Joshua then said, "Don't be afraid. I'm not that mean. I won't kill you, nor will I force myself on you in front of someone you like. No, I don't really like hearing what people think, so I usually keep it off," Joshua said. But Susie's idea was a bit outrageous. Susie blushed furiously. Nono looked at Susie with a strange look and said, "You, shut up," Susie said angrily. Nono laughed heartily. Susie looked at Joshua and couldn't help but say, "I'm curious about how you live your life, usually. I'm just like any other person. I don't see too far, and I don't hear what people are thinking," Joshua said. Nono said at this time, "By the way, you are still a student, right?" "Yeah, a freshman in high school. Aren't you going back to class?" "One day in my world is about 2 years here, so I can probably stay here for a long time." Joshua said that the speed of time flow in the American comic world is similar, but the difference from other universes is quite large. Chapter 131 Usugieri. A gentle breeze blew Nuano's long hair, and she instinctively pushed it aside. Thinking of the people still lying at Castle Academy, she couldn't help but cough before saying, "Joshua, can you help me?" There was no need for the people at Castle Academy to fight Joshua now, so they should be treated. She had crippled several of them, but as the saying goes, living is better than dead. Susie, hearing Nuano's words, remembered the plight of the others at the academy. It seemed everyone except her was in dire straits. She felt somewhat grateful that Nuano hadn't beaten her up earlier. They were indeed roommates. Nuano had a rather hot temper and a flamboyant personality, the type to stand out. This was quite typical of Nuano. Susie glanced at Joshua again. The boy's expression remained unchanged, and he seemed uninterested in everything. Perhaps he knew too much and felt indifferent to everything. Thinking back to his previous words, Susie felt a little embarrassed. She had indeed been imagining a lot. "What? Tell me," Joshua said. "You know, I injured quite a few people from Castle Academy earlier, and I need you to heal them," Nono said. "Yes," Joshua nodded. Then, an orange light appeared, swirling and growing larger. Soon, a teleportation channel opened. This channel led directly to Castle Academy. Susie, surveying the channel, said in surprise, "Is this teleportation magic? It looks like something out of a comic book," Nono said. "Let's go." Nono was the first to enter the portal, followed by Joshua, and finally Susie, who looked wary. The three of them passed through the portal and arrived at Castle Academy. Upon arrival, they saw a large group of doctors tending to the wounded. The Castle Academy personnel immediately became wary upon seeing Nono and his companions. Ange said angrily, "You dare to come back?" Hearing the principal's words, Nono curled his lips and said, "You're still talking big, but your strength doesn't live up to your words. Didn't I kill you instantly before?" Ange was furious. Susie hurriedly grabbed Nono and told Ange what Joshua had done. Ange gaped. He'd always thought Joshua was powerful, but only slightly stronger than the Dragon King. But now it seemed he'd underestimated him. This young man had taken control of the world's upper echelons in less than 10 minutes. Susie then cautiously approached Chu Zihong. The handsome young man, with his expressionless face, looked a little pale. Nono had been too ruthless earlier, breaking Chu Zihong's nose and ribs. She felt a pang of pain. Compared to Chu Zihong, Caesar's injuries were much less severe, given how quickly he surrendered. Even so, Nono felt a little concerned about crippling him. It was true that Nono was still a bit terrifying. Nono glanced at the crowd. These were the people she'd saved, they'd have to thank her later. Joshua began treating them. He was incredibly quick, so it only took a short time to heal them all. After the treatment was complete, an old man who looked a bit old-fashioned said, "You are a devil, shut the fuck up." Nono grabbed the old man and beat him up. This time she was even more brutal. Did these people really think Joshua was a good person? No one stopped Nono's violence. After she had beaten him enough, she threw the old man away. Joshua had no interest in staying here any longer, so he opened the portal and left. During the holiday, Nono was dragging her suitcase with Susie by her side. The two beauties were naturally very attractive, and people looked at them sideways. Susie said, "You rejected Caesar again. Why?" "I think he's a good person. He's rich and handsome," Nono said. "I'm not interested in a relationship for the time being." Nono looked serious, but Susie didn't believe her. Susie took a long step forward and said, "You're thinking of Joshua, right? It's true that Joshua is more handsome, richer, and even more powerful. But, Nono, that guy isn't from the same world as us. He's a god. Why would a god be interested in us mere mortals?" Nono glanced at Susie and couldn't help but say, "It's been a semester, and your relationship with Chu Zihan hasn't progressed at all. Honestly, I don't think he'll like you, so it's best to give up." She didn't want to continue talking about Joshua, so she changed the subject. Susie didn't continue the conversation about Joshua either. She sighed and said, "I can't bear to let him go." After walking for a while, a burgundy luxury car pulled up in front of them. "Miss," the man said, "Nono's driver." The two of them stuffed their belongings into the car and got in. Meanwhile, in the island country, a black-haired boy was playing a game with a red-haired girl. The girl was skilled, but the boy's skills were clearly more advanced, and the girl was quickly defeated. She let out a breath, then scratched her head. "Lost again. I lost again," she said. "I've improved a lot since last time," the black-haired boy said. His acquaintance with the girl was quite interesting. They'd initially been matched up 3 times in a row while playing games, adding each other as friends. After playing for a while, they'd even met in person. He'd been on a trip to the island nation to deal with some people, so he'd met her. He'd never imagined she was actually a girl, and that she was Usuji-iri. He knew the girl had a medical condition. She'd developed some dragon-like traits while with him. Solving such a problem was easy for him, so Joshua addressed her problem. He knew this girl well. She was a tragic, heartbreakingly tragic woman. Joshua looked up at the sky, and she poked his face with a finger. "What's wrong?" Joshua looked at the girl. The girl said, "I've successfully completed the mission of spreading the faith. You promised me a reward. What do you want?" Joshua looked at the girl. She looked a bit like Nono, but much gentler. "Well, let's go on a trip. Here's the route." She pulled out a map showing the places she had carefully selected. Since Joshua fixed her physical problems, she could travel like a normal girl. However, she hadn't traveled very far, so she wanted to go with Joshua. She looked at the black-haired boy with great anticipation. Chapter 132 I Rule the World. Travel. Joshua turned to look at Usuji-iri. The girl nodded immediately, looking very excited. Ever since she could speak, her personality had gradually become more lively. "That's fine," Joshua nodded. Usuji-iri immediately went home to prepare some things. While she was doing so, someone came to see Joshua. It was a middle-aged man. The moment he saw Joshua, he said respectfully, "Sir, what can I do for you?" Joshua said calmly. "I just wanted to ask if you're getting used to living here," he said flatteringly. He had become prime minister thanks to Joshua's removal of the previous prime minister and the appointment of him as the new one. Even if he had to kneel down and lick someone's shoes, he would do it without hesitation. "Not bad. By the way, don't bother me unless you have something to ask. If I need anything from you, I'll have Zero tell you," Joshua said. The man immediately bowed and apologized. Then, very tactfully, he left. The man got into a car, and his expression instantly turned icy. Of course, this expression was for his subordinates. He wouldn't dare treat Joshua like that. A young man with shaggy hair chattered away at a rather artistic girl, cracking jokes he'd picked up online, just to cheer her up. The girl was actually laughing, but her gaze was fixed on a young man with a blank expression. He was handsome, the Prince Charming of every girl's dream. The young man with shaggy hair envied him. Even if he did nothing, girls would still flock to him. Was he the man of the show? Soon, the man with the blank expression left, as if the girls around him couldn't attract him. His departure made him secretly happy, but because of his departure, the girls also left. Only then did the boy realize that the girls had come for the blank expression. Perhaps he had known this would happen, but he refused to believe it had such a charm. "Lu Mingfei, I have to go. I have homework to do at home, and your story is really interesting." Chen Wenwen's fair hands then left the scene. The boy waved and waited until the girl left before muttering, "I'm not talking about his story." He felt like he had to let go of his heart to avoid getting hurt. Chen Wenwen didn't go home immediately, but instead walked along the path by the lake. She liked walking there because it made her look more artistic. No girl doesn't like being the center of attention, and right now, she was. Her beautiful appearance made her very popular. Suddenly, she saw a black-haired boy. He leaned against the wooden fence, gazing out at the lake. Something seemed to be drawing him in, whether it was the scenery or the fish. If Chu Zihan was a dazzling figure, then the boy not far away was like a sun, so dazzling that it was hard to look directly at him. She had never seen a boy so beautiful. Her heart beat uncontrollably. She felt she should be more reserved, but sometimes being reserved was counterproductive, so she took the initiative. She walked over to the boy and said a few lines of poetry that were very appropriate for the occasion. "What do you think? Is she very artistic?" The black-haired boy looked back at Chen Wenwen and said, "It's going to rain." "What?" Chen Wenwen looked at the sky. There was no sign of rain yet. Chen Wenwen thought about what she should say next, but then she felt something cold fall on her back. She touched it and found it was liquid. Suddenly, the rain fell. It was really raining. People began to run away. Chen Wenwen also ran. After running a few steps, she looked back at the black-haired boy. He didn't run and looked very calm. She suddenly felt that this boy might be a little different. The rain was getting heavier. Pavilion. Joshua was hiding from the rain in the pavilion. Next to him was Chen Wenwen. Of course, there was another boy hiding under a tree not far away. Chen Wenwen blushed a little because if her clothes got wet, her bra would be visible underneath. She covered it to prevent Joshua from seeing it. Joshua looked at the rain silently. Nono hadn't come yet. Nono said there was a dinner party today, so he came here. Chen Wenwen said, "My name is Chen Wenwen. My name is Joshua Parker," Joshua said. "You are a foreigner?" Chen Wenwen was a little surprised. "I was adopted by a foreigner." Then the two of them talked as if they had opened a box of conversation, but Joshua only answered and did not ask anything. Chen Wenwen told some jokes she heard from Lu Mingfei. The boy under the tree not far away smiled bitterly. Chen Wenwen was always very quiet in front of him and never took the initiative to talk to people like this. This made him very uncomfortable. It was really hurtful that something he cherished was worthless in the eyes of others. "Lu Mingfei," a cold voice said. Lu Mingfei was startled. He turned around and saw Chu Zihan's handsome face with an expressionless face. If he had a face like this, he would probably be very popular. "Senior," Lu Mingfei said. Chu Zihan, holding an umbrella, said, "Let's go to the pavilion." Lu Mingfei was reluctant to go, but he had a wicked thought. Chen Wenwen would be very embarrassed if she saw him. After all, she had said she was going home, and this was the opposite direction from where she was going. After thinking it over, he went over anyway. It was a small form of revenge. Arriving at the pavilion, Lu Mingfei glanced at Chen Wenwen, her expression slightly uneasy. "Hello, Senior," Chen Wenwen said. Chu Zihan nodded. Many people called him Senior. Chu Zihan's gaze was focused more on Joshua. After a moment, he said, "Long time no see." "Yeah," Joshua said. He hadn't seen Chu Zihan since leaving Castle Academy. Lu Mingfei didn't expect they knew each other. Time slipped by, and the rain continued. Suddenly, there was a roar. Lu Mingfei looked over curiously, and then saw two luxury cars speeding towards him. Tisk tisk. What a bold group of people. A luxury car stopped not far from the pavilion. The window rolled down, and a woman with long burgundy hair and glasses said, "Get in." Lu Mingfei felt like he shouldn't be in this place, with all the handsome men and beautiful women here. He really shouldn't be here. Chen Wenwen was right beside him, but her eyes were fixed on Joshua. Previously, she'd been fixated on Chu Zihan, but now her gaze had shifted. "So, you're the one who's been playing around?" But what surprised Lu Mingfei was Joshua, this adopted foreigner, who just kept eating. With so many girls around, he should at least pay attention to his appearance. Just then, a boy who had a crush on Nono looked at Joshua and said, "Brother, what year are you in high school?" "Yeah, freshman," Joshua said. He was indeed a freshman, but he didn't have a classes in this world. "Ha ha ha, Senior, he's still full of shit," the boy said. "Shut up." Nono raised her hand and punched the boy. The boy didn't feel embarrassed, but rather saw it as a sign of their close relationship. Nuano noticed Joshua wasn't eating the shrimp and said, "Don't you like it? Peeling shrimp is a hassle," Joshua said. He didn't want to get his hands dirty, so he didn't plan to eat. Chen Wenwen silently peeled shrimp, intending to give some to Joshua, trying to figure out how to make her actions more palatable. But someone else beat her to it. Nuano placed the peeled shrimp in Joshua's bowl. "Thank you," Joshua said. The party ended quickly. After Joshua had finished eating and drinking, he looked out at the rain. The boy who had a crush on Nuano walked up to him and said, "Senior's been talking about you all the time. What do you do?" "I don't believe she'd like a little brat." Joshua leaned against the wall, watching the rain. Lu Mingfei also leaned against the wall. "I rule the world," Joshua said. "Ho ha ho ha," Lu Mingfei couldn't help but laugh. Was this guy a chuanibayao? Rule the world? Damn, how could he say something so chuanibayao? The guy who had a crush on Nono also laughed. "Are you kidding?" Joshua looked at the two and said, "Actually, ruling the world is easy." Ho ha ho ha, Lu Mingfei almost cried out in laughter. Is Joshua mentally healthy? The guy who had a crush on Nono laughed heartily. He thought Joshua was an idiot. Who in their right mind would say such a thing? Joshua wasn't as perceptive as the two. After all, they were on a different level. If he said that, they would just dismiss it as a wild fantasy. Lu Mingfei wiped his tears and said, "Brother, are you going to rule the universe someday?" "Rule the universe? That depends on the circumstances." Ho ha ho ha, Lu Mingfei's laughter only grew wilder. He thought Joshua was mentally ill. No one in their right mind would say such a thing. Joshua felt annoyed by the two and left. It was a bit disrespectful to argue with two ignorant kids. Then he saw Chen Wenwen's surprised expression. Perhaps she thought he was mentally ill. The laughter of the two people continued behind him. Nuano couldn't help it, because Joshua hadn't lied. In fact, she could understand that the two of them didn't understand Joshua, but she always felt that the laughter was irritating. Nuano sighed. In order to prevent the two of them from angering Joshua and causing harm to the earth, she went out and taught Lu Mingfei and the others a lesson. Nuano's attack was still a bit heavy. After teaching the two a lesson, Nuano said, "Don't make fun of others casually." Lu Mingfei was a little unhappy. Why did he have to take a beating? But this girl must have practiced before. After all, her beating was very clean and neat, just like a martial arts master. Chapter 133, Dog Tycoon. The day after the party, Joshua went to meet up with Usugieri. After all, he had promised to travel with her. He spotted Eri upon arriving at the meeting place. The girl, with her burgundy hair and a simple white dress, was captivating with her striking appearance. A few bold men approached her, but before they could exchange a few words, they were taken away by the police. Eri, still carrying a white bag, glanced around as if searching for something. Finally, she spotted Joshua. She trotted over to him and said, "Joshua, let's go." Joshua said. The trip lasted about 2 weeks, and then Eri went to school. Now that she could talk properly and not run away, she naturally went to class, something she was looking forward to. She'd been envious of the students in their school uniforms during the trip. It was clear she longed to attend, seeing so many of her peers. After saying goodbye to Eri, he went to meet Nono. When she saw Nuano, she was wiping blood from her blade. Beside her stood a scaly creature that looked vaguely human, clearly a hybrid. Nuano had been dealing with hybrids lately, of course, the kind with a penchant for killing. Nuano reeked of blood, and Joshua wondered if it was just his imagination, but he felt the burgundy-haired woman before him was becoming increasingly violent. "Are you leaving?" Nuano asked. Joshua had previously told her that this world was boring, lacking powerful opponents, nothing he could find challenging, and so it felt rather dull, like an ordinary teenager lost in the crowd. Joshua nodded, wishing he could enjoy the scenery and peace in the next world. "Okay, I'll take you somewhere later," Nuano said. Joshua nodded, parting the way. Nuano took him out for a meal and then led him outside the hotel. Joshua stopped. Nono looked at Joshua and said, "Can't you?" He strode forward and took Nono's hand. Who was he looking down on? The orange-haired girl tilted her head. When had a young boy appeared on the island? This was already occupied by the fishman. Was he trying to kill himself by coming here? She quickly made a judgment. She saw a fishman heading towards the boy. Nami's heart skipped a beat. This was not good. The fishman saw the black-haired boy and said, "Who are you, human boy?" The black-haired boy said, "I'm just a passing superhuman." Despite his words, the fishman didn't understand. He wasn't speaking the language of this world. Seeing the black-haired boy's handsome appearance, the fishman had an idea. If he sold him to a wealthy woman, he would surely make a lot of money. "He's my subordinate." The girl ran over. The Murloc looked at the girl and said, "Nami, have you saved enough money?" The girl smiled and said, "Almost, almost." The Murloc snorted and walked away. He thought Nami was a fool. How could she trust Arlong's words? After the Murloc walked away, Nami said, "I'll get you out of here. It's very dangerous otherwise." Joshua, who had mastered the local language by now, said, "I'm not afraid of danger." Although the high-end combat power of this world was considerable, it was still too weak compared to him. So he wasn't afraid of a few Murlocs. Nami looked at Joshua and thought the boy before her was just a fool, like many young people who had just set out to sea. But then again, he was handsome, the most beautiful person she had ever seen. Nami pulled Joshua forward, saying, "I'll get you to safety. You should stay away from the sea." Pirates were plentiful, and people like the boy could easily be captured and sold. After boarding the boat, Nami began to row. While rowing, Nami looked at the boy in front of her and said, "Who are you?" The boy in front of her looked fair and tender, and he was obviously a rich man. She saved his life, so it was not too much to ask his family for some money, right? "He is neither a good nor a bad person," Joshua said. Nami was amused by this. Suddenly she felt a little hungry. She had not eaten since morning. She took out some food from her bag and took a bite. It tastes really good." Seeing Joshua looking at her, she shared some of the food with him. Joshua did not eat it. He looked at the half-rice ball in his hand, which still had the place where Nami had bitten it. Nami curled her lips. She never cared about these things. He was indeed a rich man. She felt a little angry in her heart. She gave him food, but he was still so disgusted. Nami felt that she should ask for more money in the future, otherwise it would be difficult to let go of the hatred in her heart. Joshua handed Nami a rice ball and said, "You look hungry. Eat it." Nami took the rice ball and downed it in one gulp. Humph, that sounded quite polite. Nami didn't want to talk to Joshua anymore. She was just a thief, and this young man in front of her was some wealthy man. Nami asked, "Where's your home?" She just wanted to send this man away and then ask for money. "My home? My current home is in New York," Joshua asked. "New York? What kind of place is that?" Nami was confused. "There shouldn't be such a place nearby." In another world?" Joshua said seriously. "Nami, is this guy crazy? Another world? How could there be another world?" Nami said seriously, "Now is not the time to joke. I'm not kidding," Joshua said. Nami, she felt like she had picked up a hot potato. What should she do now? Sell him? Sell him to a wealthy family, and he wouldn't suffer. But Nami quickly discarded this idea. This couldn't happen. Nami's rowing speed gradually slowed down. "Forget it, let's go get some money first." Nami started rowing. The endless sea was all around her. Nami felt that there was nothing to see. Compared to the unchanging sea, the boy in front of her was obviously much more pleasing to the eye. In fact, sailing on the sea is a bit boring, especially when you are alone. You will feel even more lonely. Chapter 134 Nami, the money-making. After a long while, Nami and Joshua successfully reached the island. Nami breathed a sigh of relief as she watched the bustling port. It was time to go get some money. With so many people, they should be able to make a lot. Of course, bringing Joshua with them was out of the question. She didn't want to be caught because of him. Nami felt she had done her duty by bringing him here, and she didn't want to bring a burden along. After a moment's thought, she took Joshua to a restaurant. After giving him a hearty meal, she would leave. Nami wasn't idle while she ate, her eyes scanning the crowd. Well, the people here weren't likely to be wealthy. After all, wealthy people wouldn't eat in such a shabby place. Her mind was very active. After they finished eating, Nami pointed to a naval base and said, "Go find them if you want to go home. I have to leave now." With that, Nami turned and left. Once she was a little further away, she looked back and saw that Joshua had already left. That was good. Joshua walked along the stone-paved path. Most people wore simple, even patched, clothing. Of course, some were adorned with extravagant attire, the materials of the garments exceedingly fine. Up ahead stood a beautiful woman in a purple dress, holding a parasol. Her every move captivated everyone's attention, though no one seemed to dare to pay her any attention, given the presence of several bodyguards. Joshua examined her. It was black lace. She had a truly stunning figure, though. He mingled with the crowd, stopping to observe any interesting creatures he encountered. It was true that this world was full of novelty. After a few minutes, he spotted a furry ball. It looked rather adorable. Aunt May and the others would probably like it. Joshua paused for a moment, then said, "Boss, how much is this?" The old man looked at Joshua, as if assessing his purchasing power. After a moment's thought, he said, 100,000 Baileys, 100,000. Joshua had no money right now, he needed to earn some. Joshua stood up to leave. Just then, the boss said, 50,000 berries. Joshua said, "I'm going to make some money." Seeing Joshua leave, the boss sat down. While this furry creature was rare here, it was plentiful on other islands. Suddenly, a woman in a purple dress holding a parasol arrived. She looked at the furry creature and asked, "How much is this?" The boss immediately said, 100,000 berries. "If you want it, Mom, 60,000, here," the woman said. This amount was nothing to her. After paying, she said, "Go give it a bath." A bodyguard carried the furry creature off to bathe it. The natural way to make money was to capture pirates. Joshua quickly targeted a pirate with 1,000,000 berries. A pirate group called the Black Bear Pirates. Once Joshua locked onto his target, he flew over in an instant. His speed was so great that he landed on the deck with a thud, shattering the wooden deck. Joshua's arrival startled the Black Bear Pirates. A one-eyed man, carrying a large sword, stood up and declared, "Boy, you are." Seeing their leader rise, the others began to shout, weapons drawn, and ready to attack. Joshua's eyes gradually became filled with a golden glow, and he threatened to kill them all with his heat vision. Seeing Joshua's eyes filled with gold, the Black Bear Pirates leader sensed danger and shouted, "Kill him!" Hearing his words, the pirates rushed towards Joshua. Their swords raised. The golden heat vision shot out in an instant, piercing everything in its path. Several pirates were pierced by the heat vision, and Joshua began to shift his sight, slicing the pirates in half. Pirates who approached Joshua were killed by the symbiote, whose tentacles, like scythes, continuously harvested their lives. Each swing of its tentacles cut through a large group of pirates. The battle lasted only seconds. The captain of the Black Bear Pirates was frozen in fear. He felt a wave of nausea at the sight of the mangled limbs on the ship. How could this be possible? He was a ruthless pirate, he should have enjoyed such a spectacle. Why was he feeling so sick? Even as he froze, Joshua's tentacles launched themselves at him. In the next second, they cleanly severed his head. Joshua then carried it to the Marines. "Bounty hunter," a young-looking Marine asked. Joshua nodded and placed the Black Bear Pirates captain's head in front of the Marine. The Marine began to verify the man's identity. Quickly confirming the head was indeed the Black Bear Pirates captain, he handed Joshua the bounty and said, "Don't cause trouble here. Bounty hunters are known for their ability to stir up trouble, and many have been captured." Joshua nodded, took the money, and left. Nami was running furiously, several men behind her shouting for her capture. Nami had stolen a gem from their master, which looked quite valuable. Naturally, she was being pursued. Fortunately, Nami had studied the surrounding terrain, and she quickly lost them. However, she didn't dare show up at the harbor right now, as she'd be easily caught. She had to leave quietly at night. Nami quickly changed her clothes and put on a wig, making it harder for people to recognize her. As she walked down the street, she even spotted one of the men who had been chasing her. She remained calm, walking past a man without a second thought. Suddenly, the man called out to Nami. "Has she been discovered?" Nami was startled, but remained calm. "Miss, have you seen this man?" the man asked. It was just a question, and Nami shook her head. Suddenly, a short woman said, "I saw this woman and a boy coming here earlier. They must be in the same group. Can you tell me more about it?" the man asked. "You'll have to pay," the short woman said. The black-haired boy was so dazzling, so she paid special attention to him and the orange-haired girl. She didn't expect to get such a pleasant surprise. It was really nice. The man nodded and said, "Sure, as long as you can tell us the information." Chapter 135 Because of you I became a criminal. "Okay, give me the money," Joshua said, holding out his palm. In front of him was a little girl whose doll was broken, so Joshua offered to help. Of course, He had to pay, and since he'd already done the service, the girl couldn't help but pay. Huh? The little girl was stunned. She'd thought it was free, but after taking a closer look at the doll, she had to admit that the older man's craftsmanship was truly impressive. He'd made it look as if it were still in good shape. How much? The little girl asked. Honestly, the older man before her was quite handsome, much more handsome than her dad. Wouldn't it be enviable if you were her dad? Having a handsome dad would be incredibly prestigious among their friends. 100 Baileys, Joshua said. Oh, the little girl handed him 100 Baileys, then said, I have a lot of broken dolls at home. Can you fix them for me? I'll pay. Okay, let's go, Joshua said. The little girl led the way, looking incredibly cute and tiny in her tiny skirt. What do you do, big brother? The little girl asked. Whatever I want to do, Joshua replied. I'm unemployed, the little girl said bluntly. Joshua, a few minutes later, the little girl led him into a villa. It was obvious that this little girl was quite wealthy. She had a room dedicated to her dolls. As Joshua surveyed the room full of dolls, he felt like he'd stepped into a horror movie. The little girl dug out a box from a corner, revealing exquisite dolls. Joshua immediately began to help mend the pieces. Suddenly, a maid spoke up. Miss, Lady Kona is back. Kona was the little girl's mother. The little girl responded, then said to Joshua, Big brother, you fix it. I'll be gone for a moment. Then, she hurried downstairs. The maid silently watched Joshua, trying to prevent him from causing any trouble. He had a handsome face, but he was just a doll repairman. Life wouldn't be easy with him. Suddenly, she noticed Joshua's fingers trembling at an extremely fast pace, and for a moment, she felt that even without money, life was manageable. Such a high frequency should make life comfortable. Her salary was actually quite good, more than enough to support a gigolo. The maid silently pressed her thighs together. Suddenly, Joshua's nose twitched. It was a familiar smell. The woman behind him had inappropriate intentions. Joshua quickly repaired all the dolls and placed them in a box. He stood up and said to the maid, I'll take them down for her to inspect. The maid nodded. Joshua arrived at the first floor lobby and saw a young girl acting coquettishly while hugging a tall woman. Noticing Joshua, the girl immediately asked, Are you done? Joshua handed her the box. The girl opened it and couldn't help but exclaim, seemingly delighted. All fixed. The little girl paid immediately, even giving a little more. Of course, Joshua didn't mind the extra money. Kona looked at Joshua and asked, Is this person a friend of yours? She pulled out a portrait of Nami. This girl had previously stolen her gem, and unexpectedly, her accomplice showed up here. She suspected Joshua might be here to steal something. I know her. She sent me to this island before. She's quite nice and even treated me to a meal, but that's all our relationship is, Joshua said. Kona looked at Joshua and said, This person stole my gem, and you're related to her, so I can't let you go easily. So you want to imprison me? Joshua asked. No. I'm just asking you to stay here for a few days. We'll provide you with the best service. If she doesn't come here, it proves you're not related, Kona said. You can stay if you want me to, but you'll have to pay. Time is money, after all, Joshua said. Kona nodded and said, 1 million Baileys a day, Joshua said. 100 million a day, Kona looked at Joshua. 100 million? What a ridiculous sum. If Joshua had no connection to the previous thief, she would lose hundreds of millions. But if the thief came back to rescue him, she would get her gem back, and she might even not have to pay for it. She weighed the pros and cons, deciding the gem was more valuable. She nodded and said, Okay. Joshua then enjoyed impeccable service, including excellent food and drinks. Seeing Joshua's relaxed demeanor, Kona suddenly felt that perhaps they really had nothing to do with each other. At night, Joshua controlled his mecha and battled the mecha controlled by the symbiote. The battle between the two mechas looked thrilling. The symbiote suddenly said, Someone's coming, and then merged into Joshua's body. Joshua silently put the mecha away. The door opened, revealing a tall girl in a black and white maid outfit. It was Nami, but now she looked like someone else. I'm sorry, I put you in danger, Nami said, removing her wig. Yet, Joshua nodded. If you hadn't come, I'd have 100 million a day, but now I don't. I might even be mistaken for a thief, Nami. Suddenly, the door was violently flung open, and a tall man entered first, followed by Kona's stern face. We have to go. Nami grabbed Joshua's hand and rushed to the window. Nami threw a smoke bomb, which exploded among the crowd. Nami and Joshua then crashed through the window. Joshua landed safely, and Nami followed suit. She immediately grabbed Joshua's hand and ran. An hour later, Nami, panting, rowed the boat and said, "Finally, we escaped." Joshua said, "Because of you, I might become a wanted criminal." Nami rubbed her head, looking a little embarrassed. Just as the atmosphere was awkward, Nami noticed the Arlong pirate's ship. "We can hitch a ride," Nami said. After that, Nami took Joshua aboard. The moment Aaron saw Nami, he said, "Not bad, Nami, you actually found a good product, one worth hundreds of millions." Then Aaron's eyes fell on Joshua. Nami's expression darkened for a moment, as if she had gotten a boy next to her into trouble again. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136. Are you Kizaru? Aaron stood up. His tall stature and jagged nose looked particularly sharp. He walked over to Joshua and said, "I'll sell you to an auction house, and someone will buy you." Ho ha ho ha! Aaron laughed triumphantly, and Nami's face dropped completely. He loved seeing humans suffer. Surprisingly, Joshua's expression didn't change much, which made Aaron a little unhappy. Damn. The atmosphere was already set, and yet he was so disrespectful. Aaron slapped Joshua in the face. Nami tried to push him away, but the next moment, Joshua slapped Aaron in the face. Then, Nami saw Aaron's head explode like a watermelon from a bullet. Blood splattered on Nami's face, and she widened her eyes and screamed. The fishmen were stunned. They had never expected this. Aaron, who had been fine just a moment ago, had his head blown off in an instant. The fishmen roared, reacting as they charged at Joshua. "Leave it to me," the symbiote exclaimed, its pitch-black tentacles transforming into sharp spears, piercing each of the fishmen, slaying them all in a flash. The symbiote devoured the bodies swiftly, causing Nami to retch. A few minutes later, Nami looked up. Joshua and she were the only ones left on the boat. She asked, "Who are you? A devil fruit user? Or some kind of monster?" "Me? My name is Joshua Parker. You can call me Superman, or God," Joshua said. Nami opened her mouth and said, "You claim to be a god, but can you save this hopeless world? Can you kill all the pirates?" "I can do all that you say," Joshua said. "Then why don't you change the world?" Nami couldn't help but wonder. "Why should I? What would I gain from changing the world?" Joshua's tone was calm. Nami opened her mouth, suddenly at a loss for words. Just as Nami was silent, Joshua spoke. "But I can give you the power to change the world." Nami's eyes lit up. Joshua said, "Here, you go." The seed of faith fell into Nami's hands and quickly merged into her body. Nami silently felt the power when she suddenly saw a black-haired girl. The girl said, "My name is Zero. I'll help you from now on. I'll also tell you directly what the master has commanded." Nami looked towards Joshua, but he had vanished. Sabeo de Archipelago. Joshua arrived here. Well, the trees here are still very large, and he found the people coming and going quite interesting. "Hey, is this your first time here? I can be your guide, but I need money. A little for drinks will be enough." "I'm not greedy," a white-haired old man in slippers said. Joshua looked at the old man. This guy was Rayleigh. He didn't expect him to find him. Rayleigh felt a certain sense of danger when he saw the black-haired boy before him, but from his perception, he was clearly just an ordinary person. It was this sense of danger that led him to approach Joshua. Fine," Joshua nodded. The two of them then wandered around the island. After a while, Joshua spotted someone dressed like an astronaut, looking incredibly ugly. It was the first time Joshua had seen someone so unique. This must be a celestial dragon, the nobles of One Piece, a group virtually no one dared to mess with. Rayleigh then said, "We need to leave." Joshua nodded and prepared to leave, but a female celestial dragon noticed him. Rayleigh groaned, his sense of danger growing stronger for some reason. The female celestial dragon approached, looked at Joshua, and said, "You will be my slave from now on." Everyone lamented the thought of such a child becoming a slave, with no idea how long he would survive. Rayleigh planned to rescue Joshua later, as he still owed him money for drinks. "Get lost," Joshua said. Everyone who heard this was shocked. A young man insulted a celestial dragon. Their hair stood on end. Sister, just kill him. A portly, busty male celestial dragon arrived, aimed his flintlock rifle at Joshua, and pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet fired. It struck Joshua but deflected. As everyone watched, Joshua's face widened. A chilling murderous intent emerged. The celestial dragon's bodyguard sensed something was amiss, but it was too late. Joshua had already grabbed the male celestial dragon's neck and applied a slight pressure. Crack! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Admiral, the Admiral is coming. Everyone, run! The death of a celestial dragon was a rare occurrence. How dare you? The female celestial dragon demanded. Kill you! The symbiote's tentacles pierced the celestial dragon, killing the guards as well. Joshua remained calm as he watched the fleeing men. At this moment, Rayleigh spoke up. Get out of here. Joshua tilted his head and said, why should I run? Before Rayleigh could say anything, a golden figure appeared and declared, because the Admiral has arrived. How terrifying. He actually killed a celestial dragon. Young people these days are truly insane. Rayleigh silently stepped aside, having not expected Kizaru to arrive so soon. Kizaru pointed his finger at Joshua, and a burst of yellow light shot out. Joshua didn't dodge, letting the attack fall upon him. Kizaru's expression changed the next moment, as his attack failed to penetrate Joshua, not even his clothes. How terrifying, Kizaru said seriously. Joshua looked at Kizaru and said, I'll give you 1 minute to escape. Really? A golden, hot gaze passed over Kizaru's face, blood appearing on his cheek. Kizaru's expression grew increasingly serious. Joshua had just analyzed Kizaru's body, so he only needed to make adjustments to attack him. This meant that elementalization was useless against him. Not going to run? Then I hope you can hold on for 5 seconds, Joshua said, and then he slowly pressed down. The ground gradually crumbled. Kizaru sensed danger and had to flee. This was a monster. He turned into a point of light and quickly fled from here. Kizaru flew far away in an instant. He was still trying to escape, but suddenly a voice said, You are too slow. Chapter 137 I am the only celestial dragon. Rayleigh had never imagined that Kizaru, the world's most powerful warrior, would be defeated so easily, without even a shred of resistance, as if catching a harmless cat. Could the world's pinnacle be so weak? Rayleigh was bewildered. Glancing at the fleeing people around him, he suddenly realized it wasn't that the world's pinnacle was too weak, but that the black-haired boy was too strong. The next second, a dark figure descended from the sky, plummeting to the ground like a meteorite, shattering a large section of the ground in an instant. Joshua tossed Kizaru in front of Rayleigh and said, Too slow. Kizaru had previously been severely injured by Joshua's punch. Kizaru had assumed Joshua could have killed him with a single blow, but the boy had only severely injured him. Was he planning something? The excruciating pain left him unable to stand. Hearing Joshua's words, Rayleigh gave a wry smile. How could Kizaru be slow? He was clearly incredibly fast. Countless Den Mushi were broadcasting Joshua lived to the world. Joshua pulled a Den Mushi from Kizaru and said, Well, I just wanted to travel in peace, eh? Joshua sighed, his gaze gazing into the distance. Come on, let me see the capabilities of the world's strongest fighter, Joshua said, tossing the Den Mushi aside. Rayleigh observed Kizaru's miserable state and then said to Joshua, Are you going to war with the Navy? War? Joshua looked at Rayleigh and shook his head slightly. Rayleigh silently watched Joshua, awaiting his next words. It's just a one-sided massacre, Joshua began. Rayleigh couldn't help but exclaim, it was indeed a massacre, the world would change because of Joshua. Joshua looked at Kizaru and said, Your strength is quite good. The next battle will be up to you. I still need enough experts. Kizaru was speechless, but from Joshua's words, he understood that this young man had the power to control him. Suddenly, he saw a black substance emerge from Joshua's body, bouncing around him like insects. Kizaru's eyes widened as he saw it merge into his body. He felt it fused with his cells, taking control of his body. Kizaru's wounds quickly disappeared. In an instant, he stood up, silently looking at Joshua. Joshua thought for a moment and said, This place is quite beautiful. It would be a shame to destroy it. So, go to Marine headquarters and fight. You have enough strength now. Go ahead. Kizaru didn't want to move, but his body moved of its own accord. Kizaru transformed into a point of light and quickly disappeared. He could feel his speed was much faster than before. In a moment, He appeared at Marine headquarters, where the troops were assembling. The next second, golden light released from his fingertips, piercing a warship, sending those on the deck into the water. The massive explosion attracted everyone, and the Marines looked up. "Admiral Kizaru, why are you attacking us?" The Marines were bewildered. Akainu then slowly emerged and demanded, "Are you mad?" Akainu was furious. Was Kizaru's brain broken? Just as he was thinking this, he sensed danger, and instantly, armament haki enveloped him. A golden light condensed into a leg, which struck Akainu. The kick sent Akainu flying. His body shot out like a cannonball, crashing into the wall. With a resounding roar, the massive wall collapsed in half. This power, Akainu rubbed his head. Kizaru's kick had injured him. This wasn't the kind of power Kizaru should possess. This power even surpassed Kato. What was going on? Akainu blew the bricks off his body and slowly walked out. He then saw Kizaru in the sky, and Garp and the others below. All the high-ranking officers of Marine headquarters had arrived, with the exception of Aokiji, who was outside. Kizaru, radiating a golden glow, declared, "Surrender. You can't win." Garp roared, "What's wrong with you?" Everyone drew their weapons. Kizaru spun, unleashing a barrage of golden attacks. "Looks good. One man can suppress the top brass of Marine headquarters." Joshua watched the battle unfold on the screen, showing Kizaru in action. Visually, Kizaru certainly looked impressive, all gleaming gold, but unfortunately, he looked rather dastardly. Riley hadn't expected Kizaru, controlled by Joshua, to possess such power. Riley observed for a moment, then said, "What will you do after destroying Marine headquarters?" Well, I'll control the top brass of the Navy and have them sweep across the world. Pirates and celestial dragons alike are all worthy targets," Joshua declared. Riley suddenly felt Joshua was quite kind. But what Joshua said next left him bewildered. "How could anyone be more arrogant than me?" Joshua muttered. "Riley, so you're doing this?" Riley's gaze fell on some civilians. Perhaps Joshua, a celestial dragon, might be kinder to them. After all, Joshua clearly wouldn't bully them. The world was about to change. Riley hadn't expected this day to arrive so soon, unbelievably so. Joshua looked at them and said, "I'm going fishing." Kizaru's fight wasn't much to watch, it was better to go fishing. Riley silently followed Joshua's lead. A few minutes later, the two of them took their fishing rods and began fishing. Joshua cast his hook into the water and began fishing. He then saw a mermaid quietly release a fish that had taken the bait. Riley silently lifted his hook and saw a large fish. "That's quite a big fish," Riley said. "Hey," Joshua sneered, then looked at the mermaid who had released his fish. "Let my fish go, and then I'll go fishing in the sea, and catch a mermaid princess." Joshua jumped into the sea under Riley's gaze. Suddenly, he felt Joshua was being petty, but then he thought, he was so strong, why should he be bullied? Riley silently prayed that Joshua wouldn't start killing the mermaids. "I'll update the book in the next few months, guaranteeing over 10,000 words a day. After finishing this one, I'll write an Ultraman or Kamen Rider book. I still have so much to write, so I'll have to speed up. Because I'm writing so quickly, I might not notice any typos, so please help me find them." Chapter 138 King of the World. Riley waited silently for Joshua. About 10 minutes later, a figure appeared, clutching something. Then a glass fish tank appeared, and Joshua placed something in it. It was two beautiful mermaids, one pink and the same one he'd previously placed in the tank. Joshua added a little water to the tank. The pink mermaid was the mermaid princess Shirahoshi, and the other, Heidi, had blue hair. He'd kept fish as a child, so he decided to keep two now. Shirahoshi trembled, having barely grasped what was happening before she was captured and shrunk. Heidi was also bewildered, confused as to why Joshua had shrunk her, and she pounded on the tank. "Let us go," Heidi exclaimed. "Hey, you just let my fish go, so now you take their place." Joshua hugged the tank and rocked it. Heidi and Shirahoshi immediately embraced. As for why Shirahoshi's cries didn't attract the Sea Kings, it was naturally because Joshua had blocked Shirahoshi's ability to summon them. But soon, a group of mermaids arrived, seeking to reclaim Shirahoshi. Riley coughed and said, "Let me help you take care of them." Riley felt he could communicate with the mermaids. After all, if Joshua had taken action, they would have been dead. Riley first demonstrated his immense strength, beating up a group of mermaids before conferring with a merman king. The discussion went smoothly, After all, someone capable of instantly killing a Marine Admiral was quite intimidating. After the mermaids left, Rayleigh approached Joshua and said, "It's just a few small matters." Joshua replied, "I don't mind turning them into charcoal grilled fish." "You saved them." Hearing Joshua's words, Rayleigh smiled but remained silent. He offered Joshua a glass of wine and said, "Would you like some?" "No." Joshua waved his hand, declining. He didn't like drinking. "It's over," Kizaru muttered, his gaze fixed on the high-ranking Marines. Each one was injured, with Akainu suffering the most serious. Kizaru stepped forward and said, "If he hadn't needed you, you'd be dead." Kizaru opened his hand, and a black symbiote emerged from it. He then placed it into Akainu's body, allowing him to control him. Akainu was already dying, lying on the shattered ground, staring at the sky. He had no strength left. They had previously joined forces to fight Kizaru, but they had failed. Now Kizaru was incredibly powerful, single-handedly capable of crushing all the high-ranking Marines. He watched Kizaru place the pitch-black symbiote on himself. It then merged into his body. Kizaru said, "Now you'll understand why my power is so immense." Akainu could feel the changes in his body. Kizaru silently distributed the symbiote to the others, ensuring only the most powerful fighters could possess it. Soon, Kizaru had completed the distribution of the symbiote. The others gradually stood up, their wounds healing rapidly. Akainu's body, transformed into magma, looked terrifying. He looked at his fist and said, "This power is truly formidable." Kizaru silently observed the others. By this point, he had resigned himself to his fate. At least he possessed greater power. Sengoku declared, "The world is about to change." Garp, looking at his fist, then said, "This may be a chance for justice, true justice, not the protection of the celestial dragons." Soon, they received Joshua's order to assemble the army and sweep everything away. Garp said, "I feel rejuvenated." This time, he would sweep away all injustice. The Navy now possessed the greatest power. Kizaru said, "Now we must destroy the celestial dragons." "I'll go," Akainu declared. While others might show mercy, he certainly wouldn't. Akainu then led a group of Marines and departed for the celestial dragons' gathering place. A battle that would engulf the entire world had begun, the Sabaody archipelago. Joshua looked at the pink-haired girl beside him and said, "You can leave now." Shirahoshi's expression immediately darkened, tears welling in her eyes. "Are you abandoning me?" she asked. She had been with Joshua for a long time. In fact, Joshua treated her very well, not only taking care of her but also taking her on sightseeing trips and even buying her gifts. Honestly, these were her happiest days. "You're such a voracious eater. I can't afford to feed you," Joshua said with a wave of his hand. He had been here for a long time and had to leave. During this time, the Navy, controlled by the symbiote, had successfully conquered the world. Now Joshua was the king of this world, the only celestial dragon. However, he did little. Zero created the laws based on this world, and the conquests were accomplished by the Navy. Shirahoshi said, I'm a princess. I can provide for you." Joshua, hearing this, he couldn't help but laugh. It was like your cat saying it would catch a bird to feed you. It was quite amusing. Seeing Joshua laughing, Baizing thought Joshua didn't believe it and immediately said, "My family is actually quite rich. I can really support you, so don't drive me away." Baizing pulled Joshua's sleeve. "You're really weird. Do you like being my pet so much?" Joshua looked at Baizing and said. Baizing's face turned red, but he still nodded and said, "I feel unprecedented happiness when I am with you. Even if I am bullied, you will help me. I like being with you, so please don't abandon me." "Whatever you want." Joshua stepped forward. "Big bad guy." Suddenly Heidi jumped out. She looked at Joshua and said seriously, "Do you really want to let us go? I have no interest in you anymore, so why should I keep you?" "Is it a waste of food?" Joshua said. "Huh? Big bad guy." Heidi made a face and left without looking back. Become the Pirate King. At this time, Garp was beating Luffy violently. Luffy held up the straw hat and said, "I'm going to be the Pirate King." Garp was furious. There are no pirates now. If Luffy becomes a pirate now, he will definitely die. "I'm going to be one." Luffy looked very stubborn. He ran away after saying that. Suddenly Garp said, "Miss Zero, do you have any ideas?" Zero's figure gradually appeared, and she said, "If he wants to be the pirate, let him be. After all, he won't burn, kill, or plunder. The master is very generous and he won't care about these things. Can you tell the adults?" Garp said. Wait a minute, Zero told Joshua the news. Joshua smiled when he heard the news and said, just treat it as a reality show. It's good. You can make some money by the way. Chapter 139 You are the new king. Rayleigh approached red-haired Shanks, carrying a bottle of wine. Shanks was sitting in the audience, watching a girl with double hair sing on stage. Shanks was no longer a pirate, he was Yuta's manager. Rayleigh handed Shanks the wine and said, isn't this wonderful? Just submit to him. Shanks nodded and said, indeed, it's wonderful. Pirates who submit get a new chance, while those who resist are turned to dust. Under his rule, the world is heading towards a brighter future. He is truly a rare ruler. Shanks took the wine and took a sip. He gazed at Yuta, who shone brightly on the stage, his lips curling slightly. This was wonderful. By the way, what about Kato? I think he's not dead, Shanks asked. He remembered that Kato was still alive. Indeed, he's not dead, but now he's been transformed into a palm-sized dragon. Joshua raised him for a while, then abandoned him. Joshua disliked Kato's noise, Rayleigh said. Kato's constant outbursts annoyed Joshua, so he abandoned him. How ridiculous. The former great pirate is so vulnerable before him, Shanks said. By the way, that guy is ridiculously strong, Rayleigh nodded. Time passed. The concert ended. Yuta found Shanks and Rayleigh. Yuta greeted Rayleigh with a lively hello. Rayleigh nodded and said, it looks better and better the more I see. Yuta laughed. Joshua, a tall woman in a black dress approached Joshua. She had come to this world's history. We can't destroy historical relics anymore, Nico Robin said, quickly approaching Joshua. I didn't destroy anything. If you like history, go study it. Why are you looking for me? I don't have anything to study, Joshua said. He had met Nico Robin a few months ago, when Aokiji captured her and brought her to Joshua. Joshua ignored Nico Robin and said, as long as it's not illegal, so Nico Robin was released. Their next meeting was at a cocktail party, where, under the influence of alcohol, Nico Robin found Joshua, and something happened between them. I know you didn't, but a lot of people have dismantled artifacts to make a statue for you. You have to stop them, Nico Robin said. Now only Joshua could stop them. Okay, but what's the price? Joshua said, stroking his chin. Nico Robin leaned in closer and whispered, I'll do as you asked tonight, Joshua, that sounds good. By the way, did you see Yuta's concert? Nico Robin asked. She had come to Joshua after the concert, and it had to be said that Yuta's concert was truly amazing. No, I don't like that, Joshua said. He preferred to hunt for strange creatures, as there were plenty in this world, and bring some home, especially the cute ones. Nico Robin checked the time and said, I'll see you tonight. I have to go to work now, bye, Joshua said, continuing on his way. Rayleigh found Joshua around noon. Joshua was fishing, and on the hook was Kato, transformed into a small dragon. Joshua had been walking here when Kato attacked him, and he had been hooked on the hook. Kato looked very small now. Rayleigh invited Joshua to a party, a celebration for Yuta. Without a second thought, Joshua declined, saying, I wouldn't go to such a boring place. Rayleigh seemed to have anticipated Joshua's words. Red Hair has found a special creature, supposedly furry. Joshua looked at Rayleigh and said, when does it start? It starts right away. Let's go together. Joshua then flung Kato off the hook and left. They soon arrived at the gathering. But Joshua's arrival caused everyone to fall silent. The pressure Joshua brought was still strong, and some people even felt weak in their legs. Seeing the change in the atmosphere, Red Hair emerged and led Joshua and Rayleigh away. Is the king a fan of Yuta too? Miss Yuta is truly amazing, don't you think the king is handsome? He and Yuta are a perfect match, he's the most powerful king in the world. Do you think he'd end up with a singer? Someone asked. The king will probably find someone of equal status. Is it the Empress? Someone asked. The former pirate Empress, now the Empress. Is it Princess Shirahoshi? I remember she and the king had a good relationship, everyone had their own opinions. Then a young man said, maybe the king wants them all. A moment of silence fell. Red Hair led Joshua to a furry white creature. It was shaped like a ball, but it looked incredibly cute, a bit more attractive than another similar creature Joshua had seen before. Take it back to Aunt May, she'll love it. Joshua touched the little white ball and said, I'll pay for it. Shanks shook his head and said, we're already grateful that you let us go. Since Shanks said so, Joshua didn't need to be pretentious. Later, Joshua attended the party, where Yuta happily sang. It was actually quite nice. After the party, Joshua returned to his room. Nico Robin had been waiting for him for a long time, but she left the next day. In the huge conference room, Joshua sat in the main seat. Kings from various countries had arrived, arguing over how to gain greater benefits for their countries. Joshua had no interest in listening. He held the little white ball and teased it. Behind each king were several people assisting him. A rather stern-looking old man said, "This is the World Conference. Please pay attention." Seeing that Joshua was not listening at all, he became indignant. Joshua looked at the old man and said, "You've been removed." The little guy behind him, a short young man, pointed at his nose. "Yes, that's you. You're the new king now," Joshua said calmly. Silence gradually settled. Joshua began, "Zero has already made the plan. Just follow it. If you have any opinions, please share them. I'll accept them, but if you're trying to fool me, don't blame me." The World Conference didn't last long. After it ended, the Empress approached Joshua and said, Snake Island needs development." Since the ban on looting, the island had been in a state of decline. The Empress offered many plans, but Joshua rejected them all, believing they would violate the laws established by Zero. "I remember your country isn't very populous. Capturing sea kings is enough to feed your people. Selling them to other countries would be a huge profit," Joshua said. "Transportation is inconvenient. Shipping to distant countries is prohibitively expensive, so few people will buy." The Empress rubbed her head. She had once relied on plunder, but now that was completely impossible. She had to find a way out for her country. Transportation, Joshua didn't pay much attention to these matters. As long as transportation was solved, he thought for a moment and said, "Let's build a portal." Once a portal was built, the transportation problem would be solved. Joshua built one and then handed the information to Vegapunk, who would then handle mass production. Boa Hancock looked at Joshua and said, "Shirahoshi said you're not from this world." She had spoken with Shirahoshi several times and had learned some remarkable things from her. "No, I'm not. I might have to leave soon," Joshua said, scratching his hair. It was time to go home. Boa Hancock looked at Joshua and said, "Isn't it good to be in this world? You rule the world. Are you willing to give up such great power? This world is good, but I still want to go back." "This world means nothing to me," Joshua said as he walked away. Aunt May and the others would surely love this furry little creature. He'd have to prepare some gifts, but what? Anna would be happy with anything she gave herself, and Penny would probably like something a little quirky and fun. Never mind, I'll think about it tomorrow. Early in the morning, Joshua yawned and looked out the window. A tall, naked figure slumped against the window. Seeing her back to him, Joshua silently walked over and said, "Good morning." "Yeah," she replied, her eyes gradually becoming hazy. A month later, Joshua left. Raleigh, sipping his wine, looked at the tall woman beside him and said, "Why don't you leave with him?" "Why should I? I'm the queen here. What am I to him?" "A mistress," the tall woman said. "Ha ha ha, you're not the little girl you used to be." Rayleigh couldn't help but laugh. The tall woman finished her glass. She had grown so much. In the past, she might have followed without hesitation, but not now. "It's hard to believe you've matured so much in such a short time," Rayleigh said. Boa Hancock lowered her head. She had always thought herself fearless until she met him. Only after meeting him did she realize how insignificant, arrogant, foolish, and ignorant she had been. "I'm sorry. You must have paid a lot to save my old self." "Ha ha ha, it's nothing, really. I just made a deal with him," Rayleigh said with a smile. There was still a chapter to go, 3,000 words away. Chapter 140, Home and the Virus. It was the weekend. Joshua returned home and handed the little white ball to Aunt May. May took the adorable little 4-ball and immediately exclaimed happily, "It's so cute." The mutant dog wagged its tail, anticipating a gift from Joshua. Woof woof woof, it even barked a few times. Joshua thought for a moment and handed it a sliced sea king. "This is for you too," Joshua gestured for Xiaolong to share. Xiaolong, wagging his tail, approached the piece of meat and took a bite. It tasted delicious. Very fresh. There was another person there. Joshua brought out a small fish tank. Shirahoshi was sleeping inside. She was such a sleeper, she'd been sleeping all the way. He shook the tank. Shirahoshi quickly woke up, And when she opened her eyes, she saw Joshua and Aunt May. She looked around curiously. She looked ordinary, not as luxurious as his palace in the Sabaody archipelago. Shirahoshi, come out, Joshua said. Joshua spoke in the language of another one-piece world, so Aunt May couldn't understand. Baizing jumped out of the small fish tank, then rapidly grew larger. She said, hello, my name is Baizing. Joshua had instilled this world's language into her mind when she arrived, so she could speak it. Aunt May was a little surprised by her politeness. This girl looked like a noble woman. Aunt May responded politely. After a brief introduction, Baizing had integrated into the family. Joshua stretched his arms and said, you guys chat while I go prepare Baizing's living quarters. He planned to prepare a small palace for her, which would be placed in the small fish tank. After Joshua left, Baizing felt a little awkward, preferring to stay with Joshua. Aunt May prepared something for Baizing and was surprised by her appetite. This seemingly soft girl could eat so much, even more than Joshua. Noticing Aunt May's expression, Baizing blushed. She looked at her with contempt and stammered, Aunt May removed the food scraps from Baizing's mouth. Let's go get some food, Aunt May said. Then the two of them left the house, the mutant dog and the little dragon following Aunt May, partly to protect her and partly for a walk. Joshua was quick, and in no time, he had built a beautiful pure white palace. It sat in the center of the fish tank, encased in a bubble. Nearby, there were plenty of areas for flowers, and of course, vegetables. But it still felt a bit monotonous. Joshua then added some fish, which made it look much better. Suddenly, he felt something and decided to go check it out. Dr. Banner lay panting on the ground, looking up at the sky. Thank you, Tony, he said. Tony, dressed in his tattered Iron Man armor, said, your dad is pretty awesome. Banner had previously received a message and hurried away. Tony, sensing something was amiss, watched Banner via satellite. Unexpectedly, he encountered real trouble. Banner's father was trying to take his powers, so he donned his armor to help. He had learned a great deal of technology from Joshua, and his armor had been enhanced with it, but even so, it still struggled against Banner's father. Fortunately, when Banner's father absorbed energy, he was blasted apart by Banner's power and Tony's reactor energy. Banner felt that Tony had become a very important friend. As the two of them were chatting, a figure appeared. It was Joshua. He said, looks like you have an exciting life, too. A huge crater had been blown out nearby. Hi, Joshua. Tony didn't want to talk much now. The previous battle had drained too much of his energy, and now he just wanted to go home and rest. He wanted to get a good night's sleep. Dr. Banner looked at Joshua and said, you're back. Yeah, Joshua said, sitting on the rock and looking at the sky. Suddenly, Banner laughed. Ho ha ho ha, laughter is contagious. Tony said with a smile, what are you laughing at? Banner began, ever since I became a monster, I've been subjected to strange looks from people. They treat me like a monster. I keep telling myself I don't care, but how can I really not care? Banner's voice sounded cheerful, yet a touch of sadness lingered. Until I met you. You completely ignored the monster inside me. It made me feel relieved. He recalled the moment when he had used his body to block an attack for Tony. Perhaps he could use this power to save others. Dr. Banner had said a lot. Tony couldn't help but stand up and said, Banner, it's time for dinner. Banner stopped talking. Tony turned to Joshua and said, can you use the portal to send us back? Yes, but, Joshua didn't finish his words. Tony placed a card in Joshua's pocket and said, swipe it, Joshua, you're making me feel nothing like that. But he silently opened the portal, and Banner and Tony walked through. Joshua's portal led directly to Stark Tower. Joshua thought for a moment and returned home. He then saw people preparing a barbecue in the courtyard. The spider team had also returned. Anna and Shirahoshi sat together, each exuding a similar aura, a timid yet endearing one. Gifts, long-haired Gwen ran up to Joshua, hands spread out. Seeing this, the others also ran over. Penny jumped onto Joshua's back and said, gifts. I want a gift. Joshua handed them the gifts he had prepared. The party lasted for a long time, but Joshua eventually walked long-haired Gwen home. The two walked down the street. Gwen said, so you really are one of a kind, unlike me who has multiple copies. She searched for Joshua in other universes, but couldn't find him. This made her think that he might be unique, at least in their universe. Yet, Joshua nodded. After all, He wasn't part of the Marvel Universe. Gwen walked down the street, her steps straight ahead, treading on the cracks between the bricks. They walked quietly, and soon Gwen said, "Shirahoshi is adorable. She's very protective." "Not bad," Joshua said. At first, he'd treated Shirahoshi like a fish, but as they spent more time together, he'd come to think of her as a friend. Soon, Joshua dropped Gwen off. Before she could go upstairs, Gwen blew Joshua a kiss and said, "See you tomorrow." "Yeah." Joshua turned and left. He walked down the street for about 10 minutes before stopping. Suddenly, a figure slowly emerged from the darkness. It was Nick Fury. His expression was serious. He said, "Natasha's injured." "Seriously? We've tried our best, but we can't fully heal her. She needs you." Joshua nodded and said, "Okay, I understand," and with that, he left. He found Natasha in a hospital. A large section of her chest had been torn open, flesh and blood swirling around, revealing her internal organs. She was seriously injured. Joshua dismissed the others and took over. Such an injury wasn't difficult for Joshua. The operation was quickly completed. After tending to Natasha's wounds, she opened her eyes. Joshua said, "We'll be completely healed soon. That's enough. You'll end my vacation time." Natasha couldn't help but say. This was enough. With such an injury, she could rest for about 6 months. Joshua, since Natasha said that, he didn't continue. Joshua put down his tools and said, "Rest well. I'm going home." Natasha nodded and said, "Goodbye." Joshua left the hospital and looked at the night sky, where the stars were numerous and shining. A gentle breeze blew by, and he suddenly thought that smoking a cigarette would be more appropriate. Shaking the thought away, he began to walk. Suddenly, his phone rang, and Joshua answered. An anxious voice called out, "Mr. Superman, there's a strange virus spreading here. Can you come and take care of it?" "Yes, I can," Joshua said. He soon received an address and flew over. A moment later, he saw a large quarantine area. Someone noticed it quickly. A woman in a white coat hurried over and said, "Let me tell you about the situation." "No need," Joshua said as he walked in. The patients had a faint aura of magic, clearly the work of a magician. The woman in the white coat said, 10,000 people have been infected, a city, including you. They haven't developed symptoms yet," Joshua said. "Stay away. Find a quiet place and wait. We'll be able to handle it soon." Joshua quickly left. He had found the person who had released the virus. In a cave, a pale-faced woman was making a potion. As she did so, she said, "Disabled people don't deserve to live in this world. They don't deserve to waste the world's resources." Ha ha ha. Her laughter was extremely creepy, like that of a monster. Suddenly, she turned around and looked at the cave entrance. It seemed like someone was coming. But she looked around and didn't see anyone. Was it an illusion? She started making the potion again. As long as she poured the potion into the ground, it would quickly make people sick. Hey, she laughed again. Joshua was watching silently from the side, but now he was invisible, and the woman didn't notice him at all. The woman packed the potion bit by bit, and she said excitedly, "The goal is about to be achieved, 10,000 words." Chapter 141 Deserve Death. The woman carefully placed the potions into a storage box, already filled with quite a few. After placing them all inside, her expression visibly relaxed. She picked up a dart from the table and squinted at the hanging world map. She threw the dart. It lodged in one of the world maps. "Let's start from here." Then she began to pack up. She hung a storage box around her body and began to draw circles. Soon, a golden portal gradually took shape. "Let's go, let's deal with these fools." She had just taken a step when she suddenly turned around. She was clearly aware of a strange presence, as if it had suddenly appeared. Then she saw a black-haired boy. She recognized him. He was quite famous, after all. Without panicking, she spoke. "Superman, a human with immense power, you are worthy of being with me. Come, let's deal with these powerless mortals together." As she spoke, she quietly cast a spell that could charm people. She looked at Joshua, then walked gracefully towards him. She reached out and gently touched his chest, as if caressing a lover. How perfect! The woman's hand moved upwards, finally resting on Joshua's face. She caressed his face. What a lovely face! She stood on tiptoe and tried to kiss him. Tisk! Joshua pulled away and said, "Are you a Kamartaj mage?" The magic the woman had just used was clearly Kamartaj magic. You weren't affected by my magic. The woman was surprised. How could her magic not work? Joshua said, your magic is too childish. I'll send you to Kamartaj later. The Ancient One will probably have a punishment for you. The woman snorted coldly and ran towards the portal. It was no use. Joshua slightly reversed time. As if replaying the past, the woman was before him again. He grabbed the woman and cast a sealing spell on her. Under this sealing spell, she could not use magic. Joshua read her mind and quickly understood the antidote formula and her murderous intent. Her magic had been evident since she was very young, but back then, she was treated as a freak, bullied, and even nearly raped. After experiencing all sorts of harsh experiences, she came to realize that ordinary people were bad and deserved death. In her world, only mages were considered good. Joshua didn't intend to lecture her, he simply handed her over to the Ancient One and, incidentally, could trade her and him for something. Leaving the woman aside, he began working on the antidote. Knowing the formula, he prepared it quickly. Once he finished, Joshua went outside the cave, fashioned the potion into a cannonball, and then loaded it into a cannon. He aimed it at the sky above the quarantine zone. Bang! With a roar, the antidote was launched. The cannonball exploded above the quarantine zone. Purple rain fell, and just smelling it could detoxify him, so that was all. Joshua then told the Ancient One about the woman. Soon, the Ancient One arrived and took the woman away. Take whatever you like, the Ancient One said as she left. It must be said that the Ancient One was quite tactful. Okay, now it was time to collect the money. He flew towards the quarantine area and soon arrived. He knew who was in charge. It was a fat man who was resting in the camp. He saw Joshua and said, your illness has improved. I didn't expect Superman to come here for nothing. I'm so sorry, Joshua. The fat man didn't want to refuse to pay. The fat man looked at Joshua with a smile. This time, the government had prepared a lot of money, and he felt he could pocket it. Mr. Superman, would you like to stay and dine with us? The fat man continued. Joshua felt disgusted. Fine, if that's what you want, then it's up to you. He restored the fat man's body to its pre-infected state and isolated him from the antidote. Joshua's movements were silent. After completing these actions, he said, good luck, sir. Joshua's lips gradually widened, a smile that made the fat man uneasy. Joshua left. The fat man still felt uneasy, but the lure of money was still stronger. An hour later, the fat man felt a burning pain in his body, as if on fire. The sensation was excruciating. Was it a virus? He stumbled out of the house. Ugh! Suddenly, he collapsed to the ground, retching. People gradually noticed his condition and called for help, but no one dared approach him, as no one wanted to endure the torment of illness. The fat man thought of Joshua's smile before he left. Flames burst from his body. A scream of pain resounded through the air. Before everyone's eyes, the fat man turned to ash. The next afternoon, Joshua saw Natasha, or rather, the injured Natasha, sitting on Joshua's sofa, eating fruit. She was still bandaged, so why did she come to his house? Aunt May said, you two chat for a while. I'll go get some food. Aunt May got up and left. Joshua couldn't help but ask, what are you doing here? I just came, Natasha said, chewing her apple, rubbing her foot against Joshua's thigh. Joshua frowned. Before he could say anything, Natasha said, I washed my feet. Joshua pushed her foot away and said, it's not a good impression. It would be bad if Aunt May saw it. Natasha withdrew her foot and said, I want cherries. Help yourself. I'm injured. Here you go. Joshua stood up and offered the cherries to Natasha. Natasha's lips curled up slightly. Joshua took out his phone and checked his messages. Let me see what's going on. It seems someone was having a concert and was being criticized. Joshua quickly skipped over the news. It was uninteresting. After a while, he stumbled upon an outrageous story. An Indian man raped a giant monitor lizard. This was truly outrageous. Natasha nudged Joshua with her foot, saying, what are you looking at? He handed her his phone and said, take a look. Doesn't it seem incredibly outrageous? Natasha glanced at the news about the monitor lizard and, for a moment, didn't know what to say. Aren't you afraid I'll see your browser? Natasha asked. Joshua snorted coldly, then said, I can see it anytime, anywhere if I want, so why use a browser? Natasha looked at him curiously and asked, would you watch someone bathe? I refuse to answer that question, he said. Natasha said, actually, there's no need to peek. Just ask me. and I'll show you anytime, anywhere. Show me, and I'll see, Joshua said. After chatting with Natasha for a while, Joshua left. After all, he had to go get something from Ancient One. When he arrived at the New York temple, he saw the woman from before cleaning it, but now her power was sealed. Noticing Joshua, she quietly turned and left, not wanting to see him. Joshua paid no mind and quickly found the Ancient One, who was now meditating. Joshua sat there for a while before the Ancient One opened her eyes. She looked at Joshua and said, "You can take anything from Kamartaj." Yes, Joshua nodded, then voiced his doubts. "She's nothing special. Is she? Her magical talent is average, she can still be saved." "Go get your things," the Ancient One said. "All right then," Joshua stood up and left. But what was there worth taking? He had learned most of the magic, and as for the magic weapon, he could even craft something even more powerful. He'd see if there were any special items. After searching for a while, he finally found a figurine that looked like it was made of porcelain. It was wearing an elegant long dress and looked quite pretty. They'd probably like it. It was also an antique. After a moment's thought, Joshua took it away. Ouch! Peter jumped from the building, and then a golden portal appeared in front of him. The portal appeared so abruptly that Peter fell into it. The portal's appearance was so sudden that he didn't even realize it. Wait a minute, Anna flew over, but the portal had disappeared. Anna looked around, but couldn't find Peter, so she went to look for the rest of Spider Team. She soon found Penny and the others. Anna said, "Peter fell into a portal and disappeared." Short-haired Gwen stroked her chin and said, "Could this be a prank by Joshua?" "No, Joshua doesn't usually play tricks on Peter like this. Something must have happened." "Penny, can you track Peter down?" long-haired Gwen asked. Joshua wasn't particularly interested in teasing Peter. Wait a minute, Penny quickly began tracking Peter's signal. It wasn't on Earth, so she widened her search. Could he have fallen into a parallel universe? Penny immediately began searching according to this line of thought, and soon she found Peter, but in another universe. "Peter is in another universe. We have to go get him," Penny said. Wow, 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 Peter plummeted from the sky, but fortunately, there were tall buildings around him, allowing him to shoot webs. He caught the webs and quickly slowed his fall. This was New York. Peter then began to move quickly, heading for his home. He was fast, and soon he was home, but there were other people living there, so it was obvious this wasn't his universe. Peter wasn't too worried. This was the kind of adventure Spider-Man should have. He left. But now he needed to get something to eat. Since the currency in both universes was the same, he could still find something to eat. He stopped at a restaurant and ordered a few bites. The waiter quickly brought the food, and Peter immediately began to eat. He ate voraciously, finishing his meal in no time. He left the restaurant. He had to go on an adventure, and investigate his whereabouts. First, he'd go to the New York temple. The Ancient One might know something. With that in mind, he headed for it. Bang! An explosion occurred on the way to the New York temple. Peter found a spot to change into a suit and rushed over. He soon arrived at the site of the explosion. A figure with 4 robotic arms was wreaking havoc, their arms easily crushing passing cars. Peter felt this octopus-like figure was incredibly dangerous. "Spider-Man!" Dr. Octopus suddenly noticed Peter, and his anger immediately flared. A robotic arm slammed down at Peter. Peter nimbly dodged the attack. From the corner of his eye, he saw the robotic arm smash a massive hole in the ground. A normal person would have died instantly. Like a venomous snake, the robotic arm struck Peter again. It was incredibly fast, but Peter was even faster. He dodged the attack, then grabbed the robotic arm with his hand and unleashed a powerful force. Dr. Octopus was flung up and slammed to the ground. It was a heavy blow. "Peter!" Dr. Octopus roared, and a robotic arm grabbed the car and hurled it at Peter. Peter didn't dodge this time, for there were people inside. Amidst the frantic screams of the people inside, Peter shouted, "Hey, it's okay," and caught the car. As Peter caught the car, a robotic arm swooped in from a hidden corner. This time, it grabbed Peter and instantly pulled him in front of Dr. Octopus. The car landed safely. The woman screamed and drove away. Peter raised his wrist and released a web of silk, which clung to Dr. Octopus's face. Dr. Octopus immediately tore at the web with his hands. Peter, with a powerful kick, sent Dr. Octopus flying, landing lightly on the ground. Peter was now at ease. After all, in his world, He battled supervillains several times a day, so his fighting skills were quite impressive. Peter said, "Big octopus, why are you out here when you can't just stay in the sea?" Peter broke into a run, his speed increasing. Ah! Ha 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 ha! Suddenly, an unpleasant laugh erupted. Then, several pumpkin bombs flew toward Peter. They landed at his feet. His spider sense warned him of danger. Was it a bomb? Suddenly, the pumpkin bombs exploded, completely engulfing Peter in flames. Seeing Peter engulfed in the blast, the Green Goblin laughed maniacally. As he laughed, Peter burst out of the smoke. Amidst the goblin's bewildered expression, Peter sent him flying with a single punch, shattering his visor. Dr. Octopus and Electro attacked Peter, but Peter, with his agility, dodged each attack, even finding the right moment to fight them off. Peter's suit was now bulletproof, so he was naturally immune to the pumpkin bombs. When did Peter become so powerful? The Green Goblin and the other two were surprised. They hadn't expected three of them to struggle against Spider-Man. Joshua placed the porcelain girl in the room and then looked at the fish tank where White Star was planting flowers. He knocked on the fish tank and said, "Shirahoshi, come out and get ready for dinner." Shirahoshi nodded and emerged from the tank. She straightened her clothes and said, "I planted a lot of flowers today. They'll definitely be beautiful." Shirahoshi was happy at first, but as she spoke, her mood darkened. "I miss my family," she said. She hadn't expected to miss them so soon. "I'll take you home. If you need to come over, just tell Zero and she'll let me know," Joshua said, stroking Shirahoshi's hair. Shirahoshi nodded. Joshua then told Aunt May and sent Shirahoshi back. Upon their arrival at the Sabaody archipelago, they noticed a significant change. It had become more prosperous. It seemed as if the people had forgotten Joshua. After all, time flowed at a different pace. After dropping Shirahoshi off, Joshua decided to check on how everyone else was doing. Nami was doing what she loved, becoming an exceptional navigator. Suddenly, Joshua sensed something. He turned around and saw Boa Hancock, now the master of this world. At this time, she looked very noble. She said, "Why did you come back?" "To take back your power." "I'm not interested in that. Shirahoshi missed home, so I just sent her back," Joshua said. Chapter 142 Thanos' News. The Empress looked at Joshua. It had been a while since he'd left, and she hadn't expected to see him return after a casual stroll. She said, "I have something I want to discuss with you." Okay, he figured a day here would only have passed a few minutes in his time, so discussing something with Boa Hancock was fine. After all, they could still have dinner back. "Follow me." Boa Hancock led the way. Along the way, he saw two massive stone statues, one of him and the other of Boa Hancock beside him. The surroundings had changed dramatically, little remained of the past. He looked around, but didn't see much he was familiar with. "Since you left, this world's technology has advanced rapidly, so rapidly you could almost describe it as changing with each passing day. I'm sure you're impressed now, right?" "There weren't many things left from the past, I can see that," Joshua said. The people who saw the Empress bowed their heads in greeting, but she walked by calmly, as if they didn't exist. After the Empress and Joshua left, someone asked, "Who's the man beside the Empress? Why do I feel that he is familiar? Could he be the favorite of the Empress?" Someone said. "Shut up. Everyone knows that there are basically no men around the Empress," a woman said. "Tisk. Is it necessary to be so angry?" the man said. He was still a little unhappy about Boa Hancock becoming the king of the world. She was obviously just a woman. "Humph," the woman snorted coldly. At this time, a young man took out a photo. On it was Joshua sitting on the throne, looking uninterested in anything. He widened his eyes and said, "The real king is back, the first king to rule this world." "What? The first king of the world?" Now their impression of Joshua is that he is the first king to rule the world. It is said that he possesses unparalleled power. Boa Hancock soon brought Joshua to a super large bedroom. The queen picked up a bottle of wine and drank it down in one gulp very generously. Joshua looked around. This bedroom was much larger than his previous one. "Wow, it's so luxurious." The queen finished the wine in a short while and put the bottle away. "You have been away from this world for almost 2 years. I thought you would never come back," she approached Joshua. "I will come back. They all like the meat of sea kings, so I come here every now and then," Joshua said. The queen said, "Let's do something interesting." Joshua, before he could speak, The Empress slowly squatted down, and it seemed that she was going to have a quarrel with little Joshua. But little Joshua was still very stubborn, so the Empress was destined to spend some time. Shirahoshi also returned home. At this time, her hometown had moved to the land, and people's lives were pretty good. At least now they would not be captured. Damn it, the Green Goblin kicked the wall. It was a shame that three of them couldn't win against one. Electro was also very confused. He said, when did Spider-Man become so strong? He still remembered that the last time he fought Spider-Man was obviously struggling, but this time Spider-Man was able to beat the three of them alone, and even prepared weapons specifically for him, which made him uncomfortable. Dr. Octopus also nodded and said, have you noticed that this Spider-Man seems a little smaller? Hearing his words, Green Goblin and Electro pondered for a moment, as if that were indeed the case. This Spider-Man was a little smaller, but his fighting power was even more ferocious. Green Goblin stepped on his flying vehicle and said, I'll go investigate. With that, Green Goblin left. Seeing this, Electro said, I'll go check it out too. Electro transformed into an electric current and quickly left. Dr. Octopus, disguised as an ordinary person, blended into the crowd. Meanwhile, Peter came across a surprising piece of news: Tony Stark was dead. Or rather, the Tony Stark of this universe was dead. He searched online again and discovered that he seemed to have died fighting a villain named Thanos. This universe's Tony Stark was truly worthy of respect. He also saw news about another Spider-Man, who should know what happened. But now they had to go to the New York Temple. When Peter arrived at the New York Temple, he saw a man who looked very unhappy. Hello, my name is Peter Parker, and I'm here to see the Ancient One. Stay in there, Peter said. Now stay put. Doctor Strange tried to bind Peter with magic, but Peter countered his attack with his own magic, surprising him. He hadn't expected this Spider-Man to learn magic. Wow, please calm down, Peter said. Doctor Strange looked at Peter and explained the situation. This world Spider-Man, having run into all sorts of trouble after his identity was exposed, had come to Doctor Strange. This Spider-Man wanted people to forget him. Doctor Strange nodded in agreement, but Spider-Man changed his mind. He didn't want the people he loved to forget him either. Spider-Man's interference had caused the magic to go awry, bringing many people to this universe, and now he wanted to send them back. Girlfriend? This world Spider-Man has a girlfriend. Peter's eyes widened. He didn't even have one. It was really annoying, and he felt a little sour. Doctor Strange, noticing Peter's surprise, asked, how old are you now? I'm 16. The mask on Peter's face quickly disappeared, revealing a childish face. Peter is still a child now. Doctor Strange sighed and said, you stay here, I will take care of things and then send you back. Peter shook his head and said, actually, I'm still very strong. I won't cause you any trouble. Let me help you. Doctor Strange looked at the still very young child in front of him and said, then listen to me. No problem. Peter nodded and said, let's go. We have to find Spider-Man in this world. Doctor Strange opened the portal. Peter walked in with Doctor Strange, and Peter said like a curious baby, it seems that you have encountered great danger before. He saw some news about Thanos. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Tyrant Joshua. The Empress was tall, even taller than Joshua. She loved to hold Joshua in her arms after they were done. Like now. The Empress stared out the window. The branches were almost growing into the house, they needed to be pruned. She held Joshua in silence. Joshua's hand gently stroked the Empress's legs. They were long, white, and, of course, smooth, looking incredibly beautiful. After a moment, the Empress said, when are you going home? Yeah, before dinner, of course, before dinner in the other world. I'd probably still have several days left in this world. Suddenly, a den mushi nearby made a strange sound. The Empress picked up the den mushi and said, what's up? It's about Whitebird. The Empress listened for a moment, then put it down and got up to take a shower. After all, she needed to clean herself up. Wait for me. Joshua followed suit. After showering, they changed their clothes and left the Empress's enormous chambers. As they walked, the Empress said, The former Whitebird pirates have become a legitimate adventuring group. They regularly search for islands, some of which haven't been recorded. I regularly pay them. Oh, and Nami is with them now. Nami possessed the power Joshua had given her, so their relationship was naturally good. Oh, Joshua nodded. Adventurers, they were truly fascinating. You go ahead and do your work. I'll go take a look around, Joshua said, somewhat displeased with the idea of a meeting. Yes, the Empress nodded. Joshua walked along a path paved with cobblestones, the various pebbles looking beautiful. Moving his gaze forward, he caught sight of a woman with orange hair. They had once crossed paths when she was a young girl. To Joshua, that was not long ago, but to her, it seemed like ages ago. The beautiful orange-haired woman noticed Joshua, then stood up with a hint of surprise. She quickly approached him. You've gotten shorter, were Nami's first words. Joshua, it's not me who's gotten shorter, it's you who's gotten taller, right? Nami gave Joshua a big hug. This surprised him, but it felt really good. After a moment, Nami let go of Joshua. Long time no see, she said. Hey, Joshua smiled, but said nothing. Nami sat down on a stone bench and said, I'm 20 now, really? Joshua sat down in front of Nami and looked at her. She was wearing very little today, just jeans and a green and white striped bra. When she pressed her hands on the table, her curvaceous features became even more noticeable. Most girls my age have children now, Nami said, as if lamenting her age. Joshua said, 20 is still very young. Nami then began to complain about some of her friends, some of whom were having inappropriate relationships with multiple men. Nami started to say, the soundproofing on the ship is very poor. Every time they start, I have to go out. Joshua, he felt that Nami might continue to talk about this topic for a long time, so he said decisively, let's go for a walk. Nami looked at Joshua and nodded. After that, she did not continue with the previous topic. After walking for a while, Nami said that she had something to give Joshua, and then took Joshua away. Soon they arrived at a hotel. This hotel was where Nami and her friends rested, and it was also one of their properties. They were actually very rich. After all, the Empress would give them a huge sum of money every year, and they could also do some business on their own. So they were considered very rich. The two entered the room. After a long time, Marco said, Nami brought a boy into the room earlier, isn't that normal? She's an adult, so it's normal for something to happen when she sees someone she likes, a woman said. When people get lonely on the ship, they seek out the opposite sex to relieve their loneliness. Nami was very popular, so people often hinted at her, but she always refused. Over time, she was considered a woman who liked women. Oh, the boys on the ship are going to be sad, Marco said. A few minutes later, he saw Nami emerge, accompanied by a black-haired boy. Marco's eyes widened suddenly. He had only seen her from behind and hadn't recognized her. Seeing Marco's look of shock, the woman said, what's wrong? Who's he? By then, Nami had already approached. Marco quickly stood up and said, hello, the first king. The woman next to Marco, the first king? The king who once completely conquered the world? No wonder Nami rejected others. Call me Joshua. Your king is the Empress now, Joshua said, showing no interest in being king. Is Thanos that powerful? Peter couldn't help but wonder after hearing about Thanos' exploits. Doctor Strange nodded and said, he's a very crazy monster. Peter compared Joshua to Thanos. He had never seen Thanos' power, and as for Joshua, well, it seemed like nothing could bring Joshua to his full potential, so it was hard to compare. Doctor Strange said, can you tell me about your world? Yes, in my world, everything is relatively peaceful, but there are occasionally villains who come out to steal money. Peter began to talk non-stop, revealing Joshua's story. Joshua is your cousin. Doctor Strange was surprised. Peter didn't have such a cousin. He was adopted, Peter said. Oh, Peter continued, Joshua has been different since he was a child. He has possessed superpowers since he was a child. Doctor Strange listened for a moment, then felt that this Joshua was not a good person at all. He had done such an outrageous thing as throwing an aircraft carrier into the White House. Listening to Peter's words, Doctor Strange imagined the image of a tyrant. Time passed slowly, and suddenly Doctor Strange said, prepare for battle. Peter immediately fell silent, and the battle suit gradually covered his body. Suddenly, a pumpkin bomb fell in front of them. Be careful, Doctor Strange said immediately. Chapter 144 Let's Eat in Hell. The Green Goblin let out a strange laugh and rushed out from around the corner of the tall building. It was unclear whether he had stumbled upon their whereabouts by chance or had known about them all along. What was that? A teenager nearby asked. A transvestite monster attacking them with a bomb? Bang! The pumpkin bomb exploded, sending shrapnel flying everywhere. Peter fired a web of silk to pull someone apart. If he hadn't, the person would have been hit by the shrapnel. Given the power of the pumpkin bomb, the shrapnel from the explosion was enough to penetrate a person. Doctor Strange then created a golden magical barrier, which blocked the shrapnel from the pumpkin bomb's explosion. Chaos ensued. A woman screamed and fled. The Green Goblin, enjoying the sound of people screaming, said, "This is a joyful sight." People were fleeing rapidly. Soon, only Peter, Doctor Strange, and the Green Goblin were left. "Leave it to me, Doctor. I can handle him," Peter said. Judging from the previous encounter, his chances of victory were very good. Peter looked at the Green Goblin, who seemed ready for a fight. With no one else around, he could fight to his heart's content. "Ha ha ha, this isn't a one-on-one duel," the Green Goblin declared. Suddenly, the sand swirled and gradually coalesced into a sand giant. It was the Sandman. Peter frowned. This Sandman was in trouble. After fully coalescing, the Sandman said in a hoarse voice, "Peter." Suddenly, a flash of blue electricity reached the Sandman, and Electro, a blue figure made of electricity, appeared. He spoke, "You still have me to fight against, and of course, them too." The giant lizard man and Dr. Octopus slowly emerged. Electro, Sandman, Lizard Man, Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus. Taking on so many supervillains at once? Peter felt the pressure. He looked at Doctor Strange standing nearby and said, "Doctor, will you help me?" "He won't help you." A man in a robe slowly emerged, his gaze fixed on Doctor Strange. "Mordo," Doctor Strange said, surprised to see this guy being dragged along as well. Mordo grinned and said, "It seems you've killed me in this world, but that's okay, because I'll kill you too." Mordo placed his hand on the ground, and in an instant the city began to twist and turn. He and Doctor Strange plummeted into another dimension. Mordo said, "It's either you or me." Doctor Strange's expression darkened. He wasn't sure if Peter could withstand so many enemies, so he had to deal with Mordo quickly. Nami had changed her clothes, this time wearing a short dress. It was quite eye-catching, at least Joshua thought. "By the way, Yuta's going to be performing here soon. You should come and see it." "Right," Nami suddenly said. The last time Yuta performed here was a long time ago, about 6 months ago, and she had thought it was quite good. But then again, if she wasn't, why would she be such a popular star? The previous performance was truly spectacular. She even saw the legendary red-haired Shanks, once one of the 4 emperors of the sea, just like the old man Whitebird. She'd heard Whitebird tell her a lot about Shanks, and suddenly she thought of Whitebird's old ailments. He was tormented by them, sometimes unable to sleep all night. Whitebird was a very kind person to her. "It depends," Joshua said. "He probably wouldn't go see him, after all, he didn't particularly like him." Looking at Nami, he noticed her expression, hesitant to speak. "What's wrong?" Joshua asked. Looking at Nami's expression, did she think she had no solution? Wasn't that a bit of an underestimation of him? Nami thought for a moment before saying, "My father has many old ailments and has been suffering badly lately. Can you help him?" Nami looked at Joshua expectantly. To her, Joshua was like a god, an omnipotent god. There was nothing he couldn't accomplish if he set his mind to it. She waited for his answer. "Of course, I can, but I think you understand what I mean," Joshua said. "Pay for the medical expenses." Whitebird was so wealthy, it was only right that he contribute to some of his medical expenses. "I understand." Nami looked at Joshua and recalled some embarrassing things they had done in the room before. This should be the case. She coughed and then said, "Well, sure, how much would it cost?" Joshua tilted his head. Because of Nami, he naturally couldn't charge more. Was he going to do such embarrassing actions at night? Soon Nami took Joshua to see Whitebird. It was obvious that Whitebird had a lot to say to Joshua, but Joshua didn't listen much. He immediately began to help with the treatment. Joshua used magic to cure Whitebird's old illness. It only took a few seconds, which made everyone a little confused. How could it be cured so quickly? Someone said in disbelief, "You're not kidding, are you?" Joshua glanced at the speaker and said, "You're such a loser, you don't know what I did." The speaker's face flushed. He said, "I heard you're very strong. How about a duel?" Oh, that's formidable. But to challenge the king, you have to defeat me first." Kizaru suddenly appeared and bowed to Joshua in respect. Although Boa Hancock was the current king, in Kizaru's eyes, Joshua was the only king. Joshua naturally had no interest in competing with such a mere ant. Just then, he received a message. Peter had disappeared. Joshua's expression changed instantly. He looked at Nami and said, "I have to go." Nami was about to say something when Joshua left. After returning home, Joshua began to locate Peter. Peter had a little of his faith power, so Zero quickly found Peter. Peter was now fighting a group of villains in another universe. Joshua breathed a sigh of relief. He had thought that some unruly people had kidnapped Peter. That was good. At this time, Aunt May said, "Joshua called Peter to eat." Yeah, Joshua agreed. Then he traveled directly to the universe where Peter was at the moment. Peter was beaten away by Dr. Octopus, which was a bit difficult to deal with. Then he saw Joshua. "Why are you here?" Peter said. "Aunt May asked me to call you home for dinner," Joshua said. "Eat? Go to hell to eat," the Green Goblin roared. "It's the 3rd chapter today. I'm still a little bit unwell. I should be fully recovered tomorrow." Chapter 145 Bully Superman Joshua. Joshua glanced at the Green Goblin. Originally, he'd just wanted Peter to go home for dinner. He didn't care about Green Goblin and his gang, nor did he want to get involved. But now, things were different. He didn't bother to talk anymore. With a flash of golden heat, the Green Goblin was reduced to ash. "Go eat in hell, Sandman, brother, weren't you so arrogant just now? Why are you gone all of a sudden?" He looked at Joshua and saw the young man's expression was slightly unhappy, and a chilling feeling suddenly came over him. The next moment, Sandman was sent flying. Joshua's attack had struck him, and the pain was intense, like a blow to the soul. "What are you looking at? You want to fight?" Joshua couldn't help but say. Then he glanced at the other supervillains. They didn't dare to breathe, fearing that Joshua would swat them away with a big dick. Peter said, "There are still many outsiders in this world. We need to send them away. This is our own business. Go home quickly. They can handle it without you." Joshua clearly didn't want to help. How could he let his work go to waste? Suddenly, a figure emerged from a dimensional rift. It was Dr. Strange. He glanced at Peter, Joshua, and the other villains. It seemed something had happened. Dealing with Mordako had taken him quite some time, so he said, "We need to speed up." Peter nodded, then looked at Joshua and said, "Joshua, give me a hand. This should be easy for you, right, Joshua?" Hearing the name, Dr. Strange looked at Joshua. He had heard some things about him from Peter before. He looked like a rather good-looking boy. Peter had previously said that this boy had thrown an aircraft carrier into the White House. Seeing Joshua remain silent, Peter said, "I'll give you my pocket money." It was money he had saved for a long time, and handing it all over to Joshua in one go still stung him a little. Joshua sighed and said, "I'll just do my bit." "Hey." Peter touched his nose. Then he saw Joshua snap his fingers. "Okay, let's go," Joshua said. Peter, his pocket money was gone with a snap of his fingers. This snap was worth a fortune. Dr. Strange was a bit confused. Is that all? He was perplexed because he didn't feel anything. Just as he was confused, he suddenly noticed portals appearing around the villains, pulling them in. So many portals with a single snap of his fingers? This young man seemed unfathomable. "Ah." Short-haired Gwen asked, "Is it resolved?" Joshua nodded, and he said, "Now we have to go back and eat." Oh, Penny was a little disappointed. She had thought she could pilot or mech and battle monsters, but she had to go home right after arriving. However, the thought of Aunt May's meal quickly dispelled her frustration. It would be nice to go home and eat. Joshua opened the portal and let the girls go back one by one. Peter glanced at the bewildered Dr. Strange and said, "Doc, I have to go home." "Well, bye," Dr. Strange said, coming to his senses and nodding. He still had a good impression of Peter. Although he was a bit talkative, he was a man with a strong sense of justice. But Joshua. He couldn't figure Joshua out. After passing through the portal, everyone returned home. During dinner, Peter recounted his adventures of the day. Aunt May listened, while Joshua focused on his meal. Shortly after dinner, Joshua received a message. "I have to leave for a moment, bye." Joshua left the house and soared into the sky. "It'll be okay," a woman said, holding a baby girl. She kissed the girl's forehead. "It'll be okay," she whispered. She had left her child in the yard to play, and she had been helping the baby girl get her toys. Unexpectedly, while she was doing so, a mad dog attacked her daughter. "Oh my God," tears welled up in the woman's eyes. Why hadn't she been attacked? "Oh my God," she sobbed. The baby girl didn't even have the strength to cry, her vital signs were extremely weak. She prayed for God to answer her. Suddenly, she felt something, and she looked up. She saw a dark-haired boy slowly descending. She hurriedly said, "Please, I'll do anything to save her. Please," she sobbed. "Please save her, even if it means sacrificing my life." Joshua looked at the baby girl. It was terrifying, bones visible in many places. Joshua took the baby girl and cast a healing spell. A healing light descended, and the baby girl's wounds healed rapidly. Soon, the baby girl's skin became white and tender. "Thank you," the woman stammered, hugging the baby girl and crying. After a few minutes, she calmed down a bit and said, I'll give you everything I have. She's my most precious possession." Joshua looked at the woman. She wasn't wealthy, and now she was raising the child alone. "I want this," Joshua thought for a moment and took the little girl's toy water gun, which looked quite impressive. The woman said, "I have a few $1,000s left, you can give it all." Joshua looked at the woman and said, "Are you teaching me how to do things?" Joshua left. The woman watched him leave. Joshua returned home and said, "Let's play." He raised the water gun. On his return, he had modified it to give it a longer range and greater accuracy. Peter said reluctantly, "You must have modified the water gun before, right?" Penny immediately said, "Wait a minute," she also wanted to modify the water gun. "I'll go too." Peter also stood up and left. Chapter 146. You call this a water gun? Tony Stark and Banner picked out some gifts and drove to Joshua's house in a luxury car. Tony drove very fast, so it didn't take long for them to reach Joshua's door. He and Banner got out of the car. Banner carried the gifts and the two of them walked into the yard. "Why does it feel so quiet today?" Just as he was thinking this, a balloon filled with water landed in front of him. "Are you still playing with this at this age?" The two smiled. Bang! The next second, the balloon exploded, and in an instant, the two of them were knocked over by the air wave generated by the explosion. "What the hell, is it still a water balloon? This is a bomb." Tony stood up, so he was a little embarrassed, but it didn't hurt much. After all, such a powerful force is enough to hurt someone, right? He looked at his hand and suddenly found a faint golden glow on his skin. This was Joshua's magic. It seemed quite interesting. Ew. Jenny would be shot in the head the moment she showed her head. The damage wasn't great, but the insult was immense. Natasha stalked over and announced, "The others have teamed up. Long-haired Gwen, short-haired Gwen, and Penny had joined forces." Some nearby agents had also joined them, leaving only Natasha, Jenny, and Anna as a team. Natasha was wearing a white bikini today. Wow, it looked stunning. "Found you," Peter's voice suddenly rang out. Natasha raised her hand, and her small water gun immediately unleashed a stream of water bullets. Bew bew bew. Peter, using his spider sense, dodged the bullets. Natasha used up all her water without hitting Peter. Peter, stroking his hair with a sly expression, said, "Hey, how's it going?" You talk too much." Joshua shot Peter away. Lately, Peter had been letting himself go. Meanwhile, not far away, Penny aimed a Gatling gun at Joshua and the others. The next second, the gun spun, followed by a barrage of water bullets. Joshua noticed the water was actually capable of shattering flower pots. "Penny, are you trying to kill someone?" Honestly, his water gun seemed even more powerful. Joshua used magic to transport Jenny and Natasha away. Joshua quickly departed. Just then, Tony descended from the sky in his mech. He raised his hand and fired a palm load of water, sending an agent flying. "That's too much," Penny pointed at Tony. "Wasn't wearing a suit too much?" "What's too much?" Tony said nonchalantly, then a ferocious expression crossed his face. "I'm going to kill you. This is getting out of control," Joshua said from his perch on the rooftop. "Why are you even bringing out a suit?" "Found you." The mutant dog spotted Joshua and fired water bullets at him from its weapon. Joshua easily dodged the attack, then rushed over to the mutant dog and kicked it away. He saw the mutant dog knock Tony down. Anna quietly approached Joshua, holding a sniper water gun. What should we do? We're so few. Anna was wearing a pale blue bikini today. How should I put it? It looked perfect. Joshua couldn't help but stare a few more times. Anna crouched beside Joshua, gun in hand. It's okay, it's just a game, Joshua said. Let's get out of here. Joshua stood up and left, Anna following closely behind. After a few steps, Joshua suddenly stopped. Anna bumped into Joshua's back. Joshua, this feels so good. Anna blushed slightly and asked, what's wrong? Nothing. Suddenly, Joshua dodged the attack from short-haired Gwen. Short-haired Gwen was wearing a pale yellow bikini with a skirt, a symbol of strength. Joshua grabbed her feet and lifted her up. Their eyes met. Joshua's gaze couldn't help but linger on short-haired Gwen's butt. Are they also alluring? Short-haired Gwen couldn't help but exclaim, pervert, but she quickly broke into a smile, and a mech descended from the sky. It was Penny. Wait a minute. Is this a foul? The mech raised its hand, and a second later, a massive column of water engulfed Joshua. A long time later, Joshua lay on the grass, staring at the sky. Beside him stood a rather unpresentable girl. Long-haired Gwen, her hair dripping wet, said, how interesting, is it interesting? A lot of houses were demolished, Penny's mech destroyed a lot of them, and then he had to clean up the mess. Especially since Natasha had asked him to help build better houses. She was really asking for help. Ha ha ha, Gwen crawled over to Joshua, resting her head on his chest. Today was really interesting. At supper, Tony danced passionately with a female agent. Banner ate quietly. He had a lot of fun today. It had been a long time since he'd had this kind of experience, and he felt a lot less stressed. Peter said to Aunt May, Joshua's gone too far. Look at his water gun. Peter took Joshua's water gun, pointed it at the ground, and pulled the trigger. The next second, a dent was made in the ground. Aunt May looked at Joshua. Joshua coughed and then said, everyone is protected by my magic, so nothing will happen. Aunt May didn't know what to say. Joshua took the water gun back from Peter and said, you should pay me. Peter rubbed his head and said, can you give me a few days? No, Joshua said seriously. Peter handed his pocket money to Joshua with a sad face. Although he felt sad, the money was valuable. After all, it helped people. Chapter 147 Joshua is a good man. Joshua and the others were sent to bed around 11 o'clock. After all, they had classes the next day. Back in their room, Joshua lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He had to help Shirahoshi find an identity. Shirahoshi would be back tomorrow and would attend school there again. To make it easier for her to return home, he had to help her prepare a device that would allow her to travel back in time whenever she wanted. Go to sleep. The next morning, Joshua woke up early. He traveled to the One Piece world and quickly found Shirahoshi, who was eating. On her wrist was a watch containing PIM particles that allowed Shirahoshi to maintain her normal size. After all, appearing in front of people at her gigantic size would be very eye-catching, and Shirahoshi didn't like looking different from everyone else. Joshua took the watch from Shirahoshi's wrist and said, I'll upgrade it. You can come back anytime you want. Shirahoshi nodded and looked at Joshua curiously, though she didn't understand. Joshua quickly completed the upgrade and handed the watch to Shirahoshi. Baizing looked at her watch with delight. She loved it. Joshua looked around and said, this is a great place to visit. He wondered if he should bring Aunt May over. For now, this world seemed very safe, with little danger, and the scenery was stunning. There were so many sights not found on Earth. She'd probably love it, right? Baizing looked at Joshua and said, what's wrong? Joshua expressed his thoughts. Baizing immediately said happily, sure, I can be your tour guide. Joshua looked at Baizing. Baizing felt a little guilty, but she still said, I really can. Joshua nodded and said, sure. By the way, we have to go to class. Baizing nodded. Then the two of them left. When they got home, the Spider Squad had already left, so Joshua and Baizing went to class together. Baizing had already attracted quite a bit of attention on her first day because she was so beautiful. People talked to her. Baizing was delighted. Anna envied Shirahoshi. She was extremely socially anxious and had assumed Shirahoshi was just like her, but she hadn't expected him to be so popular. That afternoon, Joshua and his family traveled to Shirahoshi's world. Shirahoshi served as their guide, while Joshua acted like an ordinary person, even casting a spell on himself to make him unrecognizable. If someone suddenly jumped out and shouted "First King," he'd probably have to explain himself for a long time. Joshua put his hands in his pockets and looked around. At this point, he was no different from an ordinary person, and his perceptions were similar. Speaking of which, this place has changed again. What is this? A murloc? Or a deep-sea monster? Will it lay eggs in us? Peter exclaimed in surprise. Joshua, Shirahoshi hurriedly said, they don't lay eggs in humans. She didn't know why Peter had such a thought. Peter nodded, but his eyes were still a little wary. Penny was delighted and ran around. The mutant dog and the little dragon quietly left, then transformed into their original forms to hunt. Joshua couldn't help but warn, be careful, don't get eaten by the sea kings. The mutant dog nodded and left with the little dragon. The Empress watched the show silently. It was, well, boring. She stood up and said, I'm going for a walk. Don't follow me. Leaving her guards behind, she left. After walking for a while, she noticed a woman who seemed lost. It must be her first time here. Boa Hancock had taken a few steps when the lost woman approached and said, I want to ask for directions. Hearing the woman speak, Boa Hancock was surprised. You don't know me. She was an important figure. May said, I'm sorry to bother you. The tall woman looked a bit formidable. Boa Hancock glanced at May, but she hadn't said anything yet. A little girl ran over. Aunt May, Joshua's waiting for us. Let's go. Penny ran over, noticing Boa Hancock. The dark-haired woman was incredibly tall and beautiful. Yes, May nodded, then looked at Boa Hancock and said, excuse me for bothering you. The Empress silently stared at the two people before her. Could the Joshua they were talking about be him? They might not be from this world, which would explain why they didn't recognize her. The Empress followed them and soon spotted Joshua. There were several people around him, and they all looked like they had some special connections to him. She glanced at Joshua, but before she could say anything, everyone began to bow. So many people were bowing that Peter and the others noticed. Peter coughed and said, should we bow too? He felt a bit out of place if he didn't. The Empress walked proudly before the crowd, then glanced at Joshua and said, no need. After all, you're not from here. Peter was thrilled. It was his first time meeting such a prominent figure. Since you've come all this way, I'll treat you, the Empress apologized. Things seem to be getting complicated. Empress, Shirahoshi returned, walking over with Anna carrying some snacks. Unexpectedly, they'd run into the Empress. The Empress nodded and said, would you like to come too? Wow, it's the Empress. She's so beautiful. Peter was thrilled. He hadn't expected to meet the Empress of another world. What if she fell in love with him? Peter's fantasies were already well underway. Gwen, with short hair, looked at the Empress and couldn't help but ask, she's so beautiful. How did you two meet? It was clear that the Empress knew Joshua. That's how we met, Joshua said. He was a little worried that the Empress would tell Aunt May about what he'd done here. So, it was harmless, but he still didn't want to leave a bad impression. Aunt May asked, what do you think of Joshua? Joshua's expression froze for a moment, and he quickly used time stop. He walked over to the Empress and released her time stop. The Empress hadn't expected Joshua to have such a perverted ability. Don't tell Aunt May what I did here, Joshua said. After everyone's time stopping ended, the Empress looked at Aunt May and said, Joshua is a good person. Chapter 148, Traveling Through Time. Joshua and his friends had a wonderful vacation, spending a full 7 days in the world of One Piece before returning home. It feels like ages since I've been home, but I can't believe only a little time has passed, Aunt May said. It's because time flows differently, Joshua said. Aunt May smiled. So that's how it is. After returning home, everything felt calmer. The following days were relatively peaceful, with even the villains rarely appearing. Saturday soon arrived, and Joshua, as usual, planned to explore other worlds. After saying goodbye to everyone early, he set off. In the passageway, Joshua quietly ate snacks and drank drinks. There were quite a few snacks from the One Piece world, which seemed quite good. Zero appeared beside Joshua and carefully placed some snacks into his mouth. We'll be there soon, she said. She could sense they were getting closer to their destination, probably just a few minutes away. This time, it should be the Marvel Universe, and who knew what kind of Marvel Universe they would encounter. It was like opening a blind box. Getting a good one is naturally exciting, but getting a bad one is disappointing. Time slipped by. Soon, they had traveled to a brand new Marvel universe. The spaceship transformed into a mecha and landed smoothly. Joshua frowned. This seemed like an abandoned site, a garbage dump. This was the worst possible start. Joshua opened a barrier to filter out the foul smell. He noticed some people, some who looked like scavengers, rushing frantically towards Joshua. Joshua could understand their language. Rob him. The scavengers looked all sorts of strange, some stone-like creatures, some worm-like. One of them, holding a laser weapon, pointed at Joshua and said, "Get down." Joshua frowned. Had this guy never experienced the harshness of society? Joshua's eyes gradually turned golden, and a fiery energy gathered in them. In a moment, a golden, scorching light filled his vision. He unleashed a burst of golden heat, instantly piercing the man's weapon. With a startled heartbeat, the man knelt decisively, his apologies trembling. Joshua didn't overdo it, waving them off. A group of scavengers fled in panic. Joshua flew in a certain direction, sensing a city, and soon arrived. It looked like a perpetual carnival. A passerby in an orange robe danced with the crowd, his movements awkward, but he was genuinely into it. Joshua took a few steps before spotting a familiar face. A large green figure stood atop a modified car with several floors. Inside were several attractive women. He was adorned with garlands, looking like some sort of important figure. Joshua recognized the figure. It was the Hulk. He was surprised to see him here. This was clearly the planet Sucker. After the end of Avengers 2, the Hulk had arrived there by spaceship, only to be brought back to Earth by Thor. Soon, Joshua spotted an elderly man, a rather frail one. He was giving a passionate speech on a large screen, encouraging people to enjoy the celebration. A celebration? Joshua rubbed his chin and wandered off to a quieter spot. Suddenly, he noticed a robot. The robot scanned the database and discovered no information about Joshua, meaning he was a stowaway. An alarm sounded. "You're a stowaway." The robot strode toward Joshua, its pace not particularly fast. Its arms transformed into weapons, and it declared, "You only live once, do not resist." Joshua was stunned. He hadn't expected such a response from the robot. It was rather amusing. Seeing Joshua remain silent, the robot continued, "You will be sent to the fighting arena. If you're skilled enough, you might win, and you can leave." The robot was already very close to Joshua. Joshua's lips curled slightly as he asked, "Has anyone left?" The robot searched for information and then replied, "No, no one ever left. They all eventually died, perishing in the arena, becoming the talk of the town." This place really relished gory scenes, like the sight of people being beaten to a bloody pulp. Just as Joshua was debating whether to leave, a nimble figure rushed over. She leaped onto the robot's arm and stabbed it with her sword, easily destroying it. The figure was a tall woman, masked, obscuring her features. She grabbed Joshua's hand and began to run. Joshua found it intriguing and followed her, soon reaching what looked like an underground passage. The woman removed her mask, looked at Joshua, and said, "Hello, my name is Gwen Stacy. You're from Earth, right?" She had noticed the English writing on Joshua's clothes, which was why she had rescued him. "Yes, I am." Joshua looked at this Gwen. How could there be a Gwen Stacy here? Gwen glanced at Joshua and said, "Follow me." Joshua nodded. As they walked, Gwen said, "My name is Gwen Stacy. I'm an Earthling who ended up here by accident. Now I'm a member of the Resistance, fighting against the High Lord's reign of terror." Joshua, he listened silently. Gwen looked at Joshua and said, "How did you get here?" "I was also by accident," Joshua said casually. Gwen walked forward cautiously. Joshua's eyes fell on Gwen. She looked tall. This Gwen must be in her 20s. Suddenly, a heavy object fell to the ground. Joshua turned around and saw a heavy robot landed. It looked at Joshua and Gwen and let out a hoarse electronic voice. "Resistance and stowaways." Gwen pulled out a gun. It was truly unique. Gwen pulled the trigger and a red laser shot out, instantly blowing the robot's head off. Gwen said, "We need to hurry and get out of here, or more robots will gather around us." Her words were quick, and her urgency was palpable. "I won't be leaving this book unfinished, don't worry." Chapter 149 Joshua wants to rule all universes. As they walked, Gwen said, "The Supreme Lord is a complete lunatic. He captures people and throws them into dueling arenas for fun, so I organized a resistance group to fight him." She approached cautiously. The resistance group consisted of only a few people, not a single Earthling. They were all from other planets. There was a stone man, a tentacle monster, and a winged birdman, 4 of them, including her. So, Gwen was thrilled to see Joshua. After all, he was an earthling, and quite handsome. They wandered around for a long time before arriving at a secluded spot. There were 3 people there, a stone man, a birdman, and a tentacle man. Gwen asked, "By the way, what's your name?" "My name is Joshua Parker, but you can call me Joshua." Gwen nodded and said, "It's called the Stone Man." She pointed at the stone man. The name was a bit perfunctory. Joshua immediately said, "Hello." The stone man looked silly, but he nodded. Gwen said, "The stone man is calm. Are you sure he's calm?" Gwen pointed at the birdman and said, "His name is Birdman." Quack. The birdman made a strange sound. Joshua knew what it meant. The birdman was saying hello. "Hello," Joshua said. Finally, Gwen pointed at the tentacle monster and said, "You can just call him Tentacle Monster." "Yes," Joshua said. A few minutes later, Gwen began preparing food. After the stone man, birdman, and tentacle monster finished their meal, they left. Joshua felt that these 3 guys were just here to eat. He looked at Gwen. Gwen covered her face and said, "I know what you mean. I know they're just here to eat. They don't want to resist at all." Gwen took a deep breath. She had been surprised by her arrival. She then began to organize those willing to resist, but no one was willing to join her. Even these 3 were just here to eat. Gwen was under great pressure. They were being oppressed so much, why didn't they resist? She thought she only needed to make a move, but she hadn't expected these people to be completely hopeless. Gwen looked up at Joshua and said, "You can live here. I'll provide food, even if you don't join the resistance." Right now, she just wanted someone to talk to, even if it meant just free food. Joshua looked at Gwen, and she felt truly pitiful. He patted her shoulder and said, "I'll join." Gwen's eyes widened. "The High Lord is a very dangerous man. He's the master here. Are you really willing to help me?" Joshua nodded and said, "Yes." Gwen was delighted and said, "That's very kind of you." She hugged Joshua. Joshua patted Gwen on the back and said, "What's your plan?" Gwen pulled away and said, "Let's try to persuade others little by little." "How long would it take to persuade them little by little?" Joshua naturally wouldn't follow Gwen's lead. It would be too slow. Gwen looked at Joshua. She felt this was a long battle, and perhaps by the time they achieved their goal, they might both have children. Just as Gwen was thinking this, Joshua said, "I'm going to be gone for a while." Before Gwen could say anything, she saw him leave. She watched him leave, feeling a sense of unease, wondering if he was going to abandon her. But if he was, why would he have said all that? Gwen still held out a glimmer of hope. Meanwhile, Goshianzen, watching the Hulk feasting before him, said, "Eat more, so you'll have the strength to defeat the others." The Hulk nodded and said, "The Hulk is invincible." Goshianzen smiled with satisfaction. With the Hulk around, no one could leave the arena. Suddenly, there was the sound of shattering glass, and a young man in a black battle suit and a black cape slammed to the ground. He crushed the ground, sending shards of glass scattering everywhere. "Wow, wow, 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 your opponent has arrived," Goshianzen said, quickly walking behind Hulk and looking at Joshua. Hulk stood up, and Goshianzen said, "You interrupted Hulk's meal." Hulk, seemingly wiser, charged at Joshua. "Hulk, kill him!" Goshianzen waved his hands as if cheering Hulk on. The ground shook as Hulk ran. Hulk leaped up and suddenly dropped towards Joshua, his hands clasped together, as if intending to deliver a fatal blow. Joshua had no interest in arguing with Hulk. He easily caught Hulk's fist and slammed it into the ground. This left Hulk stunned. To prevent Hulk from getting up again, Joshua grabbed Hulk's hair and punched him again, sending green blood splattering. Hulk was unconscious. Joshua tossed him aside and said, "Now, let's talk." Goshianzen immediately sat down obediently and said, "Sir, what do you want to talk about?" Joshua walked up to Goshianzen, who tactfully raised his hands and said, "I surrender." Joshua grabbed Goshianzen's clothes and flew into the sky. Wow, 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 Goshianzen was surprised. The speed was truly outrageous. A moment later, Joshua brought Goshianzen to Gwen. Gwen was confused. Why did Joshua bring Goshianzen here? Just as Gwen was confused, Joshua tossed Goshianzen to the ground and said, "This guy is a prisoner now. Tell him whatever you want, and he will do it." Goshianzen stood up and nodded. Even so, he seemed very relaxed. After Gwen finished negotiating with the Supreme Lord, Joshua spoke. "This portal leads to Earth, Gwen." Gwen hesitated for a moment, then kissed Joshua. "Goodbye." "Yes," Joshua nodded. Gwen left. The Supreme Lord then looked at Joshua and said, "I think I've heard of you. Tell me about it." "Ancient One from another universe came to see me. She told me you were very dangerous and wanted me to help her deal with you, but I wasn't interested. I didn't expect you to actually come, wanting to rule all universes." "Joshua," the Supreme Lord looked serious. Joshua said, "Rule all universes? That sounds like a very complicated thing." "Don't worry, it won't be a eunuch." Chapter 150 I am the Prince of Asgard. The Supreme Lord stood before Joshua, clasping his hands together before speaking. "It's said that this Ancient One is assembling an army capable of overthrowing the universe, and she will come to crush you." When the Ancient One had approached him, she had spoken extensively, raising numerous questions about Joshua. She had described Joshua as someone who shouldn't even exist in the universe, like a bug. Despite all the Ancient One's boasts, what meaning did they hold for him? Though he had lived a long life and possessed considerable strength, he was still far from the true masters. He could leave the major crises to these masters, and simply live each day to the fullest. When he saw Joshua, he felt as if he were facing an unparalleled super-universe, and he was a mere bug. This was an incredibly powerful being. "Really?" Joshua said nonchalantly. He had no interest in hunting down these people. After all, they would eventually appear before him, and he would simply crush them. "Wow, you're so confident." As if anticipating Joshua's thoughts, Goshianzen clapped his hands and said, "How about we get something to eat?" Joshua nodded. Gwen and Goshianzen had previously discussed a lot about the system, and while many of the ideas were good, they weren't perfect. Zero would perfect the system, and then it could be implemented here. Of course, Goshianzen was under Joshua's control, but as long as he didn't mess around, Joshua generally wouldn't mess with him. Goshianzen took Joshua to the top of a magnificent building, where they dined. Goshianzen even summoned a few sexy women. But what surprised Joshua was that there was a water-like creature inside. Joshua couldn't help but take a second look. Goshianzen immediately said, "It's a water creature whose arms transform into tentacles when needed. They're very popular sex objects." "Joshua," Goshianzen was very tactful and waved the others away. He began, "She's the queen of her tribe. I've been treating her like a championship gift. Don't worry, she's very pure. She's barely even seen a man." The Supreme Lord left. The queen tactfully approached Joshua. Damn it, Thor landed on a pile of trash. He'd fought his sister, Hela, but she was too powerful for him to defeat. He had to get back quickly. He stood up, unsure how he'd been transported here. He wondered what had become of Loki. Thor had only taken a few steps when he saw a group of scavengers, each armed and looking menacing. Thor, rather nervous, shouted, "Do you know where this is?" The scavengers muttered incoherently. One of them raised a spear, seemingly about to attack Thor. The others did the same. Thor realized they were going to attack him, so he roared, "I'm a prince of Asgard." Before he could finish, the scavengers charged. Gagaga, gagaga, the scavengers made a variety of noises. Thor opened his palms, summoning Mjolnir, but a moment later, he realized his hammer had been crushed. A sense of melancholy washed over him. The hammer, which had accompanied him for years, was suddenly gone, a strange sight. Just then, a fast-running scavenger reached him. Thor struck him with a headbutt, knocking him unconscious. Even without Mjolnir, he was formidable. The stunned scavenger stumbled back and collapsed onto the garbage heap. A second scavenger rushed towards Thor, but was sent flying dozens of meters by a kick. By then, the other scavengers, realizing Thor's strength, rushed forward to tackle him. He was quickly pinned down, and just when they thought they had him subdued, Thor's incredible strength began to wear them down. What kind of monster was this guy? Why couldn't so many people control him? Ah! The scavengers moved toward the woman. Suddenly, she stood up. With a flick of her hand, the weapons on her mech launched an attack, showering the scavengers with bullets. The surviving scavengers fled screaming. The woman walked over to Thor and carried him away. The electric current in Thor's body vanished, and he spoke, "I am the Prince of Asgard. I must return to save my people." "Oh," the woman tossed Thor onto the mech and departed. Asgard? It had been a while since she'd heard that name. Thor began to speak, "My sister Hela has killed the others. I must return to help." "Hela? The last time they fought Hela, so many of their Valkyries had died, she was the only one left alive. She didn't believe the seemingly foolish Asgardian prince could defeat Hela. She preferred to stay alive here rather than die. She soon sold Thor to the fighting arena. In order to make more money, she even said, "He said he is the prince of Asgard, this should be worth a lot of money." The administrator looked at Thor and gave him a little more money. Thor said, "You can't do this, I am the prince of Asgard." Chapter 1. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.